Hello, Jacksonites! And oh my fucking god, it's episode 60 of Super Kaiju Binge. We're only just barely halfway through. I've been doing this for almost 3 years at this point. What the fuck?
That's right.
Well, there's a reason why there hasn't been more episodes. So I am not going to be predictable, and I'm not going to immediately just jump into the Millennium series of Godzilla movies for the next batch of Super Kaiju Binge episodes. Because sadly, I don't like to end franchises on a bad note, and I don't like to end retrospectives on a bad note. I like to end with a big bang. So we're going to be saving the Millennium series for a later date. So before I delve into those, I got to finally tackle the Netflix kaiju material and the TV kaiju material. And sadly, from what I've seen and heard, a majority of this part of Super Kaiju Binge is going to be difficult, to say the least, to get through. This includes Godzilla Singular Point, which I still have not seen, but not a lot about that show really gives me a lot of hope. This includes the horrendous Netflix anime Godzilla trilogy. I see you shuddering with Vietnam flashbacks, Seanie Boy.
Oh God, I just watched it this past year. Luckily, my one friend she kind of joined me like over Insta and all that to kind of watch like the third part because I was doing all three of them in like one day. I'm like, fuck this, man.
Need
Fuck
help.
this. I needed help, and I'm like I can't do this. Like, here, I'll watch it with you. I'm like, I haven't seen it in a while, but man, like genuinely the one Godzilla property I have tried so many times to get into, like I genuinely just don't like it. Like you've ever tried to get into something because it's part of something you love and you just can't stand it? That's me with those three movies. So, but
Moving
it's
on.
fun if you have somebody with you to watch it. Like it's not something you can do on your own.
Moving on. Thankfully, there are a couple items in this batch of Kaiju TV era part of Super Kaiju Binge that looks promising, and there's one that is fantastic. But we're going to be starting off the TV era of Super Kaiju Binge by returning to the Monsterverse. Joining me today is, of course, Seanie Boy from JT is Reborn.
How you doing? Also, the New Empires should be the highest grossing MonsterVerse film by this weekend, and they just got a screenwriter to write the next film. Just announced yesterday, so we're coming back. But I hope it's
More on that later. And of course, can we call you by your name on live?
Yeah.
Okay. We have Pierce, the former. Oh, what the hell is the name of your last channel?
We don't gotta revisit 15-year-old.
Well, I have to because viewers probably won't remember.
Oh my gosh.
To me, he's always been cinematic trash. So at least I think.
Fuck it, whatever.
It was Movie
Pierce.
Buff Productions.
That was it. Yeah. The former Movie Buff Productions. Now we have Pierce from Cinematic Trash joining me as Cinematic Trash on my channel for the first time, but joining me for a video for the first time, if we count my pre-2020 stuff, I believe the first time since Gamera versus Guiron, I think.
I've been on your channel as
on Tom's crotch.
Cinematic Trash before. I'm pretty sure Cinematic Trash before. I can't remember what we
on Tom's crotch. But anyway, so
soon to be rebranded again.
You're rebranding again?
Just throwing that out there. Yeah, I got something in the works right now. I don't think I'm going to rebrand the channel. I'm just going to start a new channel so I can give the algorithm a good old reboot. You know what I mean?
I love the Cinematic Trash moniker, though. I mean, for me, it's like, just put everything on one thing. Your audience will just come there for this and that. Because to me, it's just you're just putting all you're mixing it up. And some people like this stuff and others do. So, I mean.
It's all about the algorithm, man. Man, my channel has been all over the place. I got videos that were up that I've since taken down. You know, the channel's got 6 years worth of algorithm history. The algorithm's killing me, man. I got to start fresh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what it is? Sometimes like the lowest effort videos often like get the most amount of views. I found like I said, my shtick kind of lately has been DC and Godzilla stuff. So that's like what most of my audience knows me from. A couple of people still like to request like martial arts movie reviews or other horror franchises, but I mean, like I said, I do the After the Movies weekly and just kind of have a little bit of a variety of different stuff to talk about. But Godzilla and
Yeah.
like DC. That's why I love covering the Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. It's like combining all my audiences into like one thing, which has been fun. You guys should definitely read that when it's all.
I can see the blood boiling in Nick.
Yes,
you guys are
right.
talking too much.
Dr. Evil over here.
For the first, and also, yes, I know I forgot to mention this in my last video, but I did indeed cut my hair.
Nick, can you please do the $1 million?
$1 million.
You look like you just got home from boot camp.
I am.
Private Pile, you.
Yeah.
Did your parents show you enough attention as a child?
All righty, so let's jump into it. So today, us three will be reviewing the not latest, but probably the longest installment of the Monsterverse, and the one that took the world of streaming by storm back in November of 2023, with a review of Season 1 of Monarch Legacy of Monsters. So let's jump right into our personal history. Seanie Boy, you can go first.
Okay, so Monarch was announced, and I was pretty excited for it. The first trailer came out. I knew going into the show, it's a show about Monarch with Godzilla in it. You have to kind of go into it with that mindset, I think. It's not Godzilla Legacy of Monsters. It's about Monarch and the people around it, with Godzilla appearing sporadically throughout the show, as well as other different titans. Now, when the show first came out, like I said, it was like I literally bought Apple TV just so I could watch the series, and it was a show that I just got really excited to watch because like I'm a big MonsterVerse fan. I mean, we all are big Godzilla Kaiju stuff. I mean, look, you got the Team Godzilla shirt. I mean, Pierce has done so much. This goes to G Fest and all that. So the first live action, well, technically not the first live action Godzilla related series, that would be Zone Fighter. But like in this modern era with big, huge special effects, I mean, Godzilla looks just as good as he does, sometimes even better than some of the movie qualities, because with the VFX are on par with the movies with it, because there's a lot of stuff with them, like huge, big production. Apple TV, which is more known for kind of serial, like serious drama stuff, having that come into the play, and then so all that stuff. Basically, from November till pretty much now, like it's a really one of the best times ever to be a Godzilla fan, because there's been so much. Like we had -1, we had Monarch, we had some comic books, and we had Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, all within a span of a few months. So it was like every week it was exciting, because it's like, oh, from here till now, I'm going to have something Godzilla related. Although there was a slight gap in, I think, like after January, once Monarch finished its first season and all. But anyway, so Monarch finally started to air. I covered every individual episode on the channel as they came out. Some videos took a little bit longer because I was kind of experimenting with how to kind of review a television format thing on the channel. So basically, I just kind of summarize things, give my thoughts and all that. And having to edit all that stuff took a long time. And then once this whole first season was done, I kind of chopped them all up, took all those clips, put them together into 1 2-hour and like 20-minute video, and it's all there on the channel. So, but I came into it from a different perspective than you, Nick, because you just kind of binged it all. I was watching it week to week, so there was a lot of theorizing and anticipation, I think, that affected my enjoyment more so than just watching it all at once. And it was the first time in however many years that I can remember where I was like looking forward to new episodes each and every week. And it was exciting. It was fun, and like speculating, okay, let's see how it's going to flesh out the MonsterVerse lore. When is Godzilla going to show up? What's going on with Kurt Russell? Why does he like look like that for somebody who's supposedly this age? So many different questions and theories and all that going into it. And like I said, you're combining two of my favorite things, Godzilla and Kurt Russell, into one magnificent package. So like I said, it was really cool to see like a live action Godzilla related show in the MonsterVerse. And now we got season 2 on the way, and some other spinoffs are in the works too. I heard there's 2 spinoffs they're trying to make. One I heard is rumored to be about cryptozoology, and I have no idea about the other one. But the MonsterVerse is here to stay. Like seeing them dive more into the television format, especially after Skull Island, which was animated, but a lot of people don't realize that's really in the MonsterVerse as much as like the live action stuff. So, but I mean, like I said, it was cool to get like a show to like look forward to each week and have an episode of television with high budget effects that features Godzilla and King Kong in the same episode. I mean, can you imagine telling yourself 10 years ago that you're going to get a live action series that's going to have Godzilla and Kong in a singular episode? You wouldn't have believed it, would you?
Probably not.
But anyways, that's a brief history of it. Covered the whole series on the channel. And now it's fun to kind of come back a few months later after having not watched it in a while, but to, you know, sit on it and discuss it with friends. So there you go. There's my history of it. Go, y'all take over.
Go ahead, Pierce.
Where do I start?
You turned your mic off.
When I heard about the show, I was excited to see it. And but I didn't watch it right away. I think what I did was by the time the 8th episode came out, I was finally able to come home to my parents' house because they have Apple TV and I don't. So I watched the show and I binged the first 8 episodes at my parents' house. And then I had to wait for the final 2 episodes to come out on a week-to-week basis. It's cool, you know. I'm glad that they're expanding the MonsterVerse. You know, it wasn't what I expected it to be. It wasn't what I was hoping it was gonna be, but I still enjoyed it for what it is. You know what I mean? Good stuff.
Okay, so when this show was announced, I was skeptical. I was made very aware very early on that this was a Monarch show, i.e., and I kind of instantly picked up on this. This more than likely was going to be a very human-centric installment of the MonsterVerse. It's going to be about the humans, the monster hunter side of the MonsterVerse. It's not really going to be about the monsters themselves. So I knew this going in, but I still really wasn't overly enthusiastic about this show. It kind of like with what Sean and Pierce saying. I mean, yeah, it's nice to see that it's nice to see that the MonsterVerse is staying, and it's nice to see that they're expanding on the lore and they're expanding on the MonsterVerse being available in different formats. I mean, we had movies and then we had comics very quickly after that, and then
I should have brought out my comics. You don't have to. Keep talking. I'm going to grab my MonsterVerse comics for this. I wanted to show them off.
We expanded into animation as well with the first season of Skull Island, and now we've expanded full on into syndicated like spin-off television. So that's all well and good. So I did not see the show when it was live. As many people know, I am not a big fan of streaming. And when this was announced that it would be a streaming exclusive series, I want that thing so bad.
It has all of them plus an extra bonus story. I mean, I did a video breaking down what's in this one. I think there's maybe like one page from one of the graphic novels that's not in there, but it's like meaningless then. And then I have 2 copies of this. I don't know why I got 2 by accident, I guess. So
gimme. Anyway,
and the Justice League Godzilla vs. Kong ones too. So
I'm not a big fan of streaming services. I think they're a fool's paradise. And when this was announced to be a streaming exclusive series, I was even less enthusiastic about it. But I knew at some point I was going to have to find a way to watch this series. So lo and behold, Meadow's stepdad, as a birthday present to me, late March, early April, got Apple TV Plus, and he let us borrow it. And I then, because at that point the show was completely available and the hype had kind of softened a little bit. I knew of a couple spoilers for the show, but for the most part, I went into this show pretty blind. And Meadow was a bit excited to check it out too. So before I proceed with this, what are your guys' vague initial thoughts on this first season? Sean, you can go first.
Well, I liked it. I liked it quite a bit overall, but I was also like caught up in the hype. Like I said, it's a few months later, so the hype's kind of dwindled down just a little bit. But I mean, I really enjoyed the show overall. There's definitely ways it could certainly improve, and I think, and I'm really hopeful that they kind of take the feedback and criticism from season one and really kind of make a better season two. Now that it's been out a bit, because there's definitely a lot of ways they can certainly improve, but there's still a lot of really good, strong stuff. I mean, there are some good characters in the show. I mean, Lee Shaw, which I'll get into in a little bit, I think is the best human character within the Monsterverse. Like, this series cemented that for me. And there's some interesting stuff even when the monsters aren't on screen, particularly this scene in episode 10 where we get the reunion between Keiko and Shaw. It's very similar to Interstellar, but I mean, the actress who plays Mari Yamamoto, I think is her name, like, who plays Keiko, like, she has to display a lot of emotion, and she does so very well. After learning that you just lost 50 plus years without realizing it. And like, that stuff is very powerful and very effective, like moving human drama. And the sense of scale and spectacle is there for a streaming show. I mean, when Godzilla does show up on screen, you feel his presence. Like, he feels massive and he looks great. And like, he has one of the coolest entrances I think he's ever like done, and especially like the last episode. I mean, he comes through that portal like he's Thanos in Infinity War, and it's pretty sweet. I've never seen Godzilla emerge through a portal before, so at least it's giving me something kind of new, and also you got the world building aspects and all that. So there's a lot of good stuff in the show. Definitely some cons for sure, which we'll get into there, and a few minor continuity flubs that you just kind of have to roll with. But I think overall it is a strong like entry, and there's things that certainly could have done a little bit better, maybe more focus on the flashback stuff, because they were much better characters than the current present day stuff, minus Kurt Russell. But I still enjoyed it overall, and it was fun to cover week to week stuff.
Pierce?
Like I said, I enjoyed this. Like, I had fun watching it. But the show has a lot of problems. Lots of problems. So I get my biggest concern with the show was that like it just didn't feel like truly consistent with the movies. There were a lot of like, it's not even just continuity specific. I mean, it is continuity, but at the same time, it felt like, this show should have been made or released before Godzilla versus Kong. You know what I mean? Like, Godzilla versus Kong had already come out, and there's certain things in the show that are relevant to Godzilla versus Kong, but Godzilla versus Kong had basically already concluded aspects of the show. Yeah, it's like with Apex. I'm not gonna say what yet exactly, but there's something about Apex that was kind of already like resolved in Godzilla versus Kong, but now we're seeing like Apex stuff happening in the show.
Right. It has to do a lot of the heavy lifting that the movies
like,
didn't have time for. So that's the stuff I like. I like the world building.
I feel like, put it this way, to me, I think the show is really good, like Monsterverse fan fiction. I think of it as like fan fiction because it has so many things in it that make it not consistent with the movies. So in order for it to not like ruin like the overall Monsterverse, I'm going to consider it fan fiction for now. Now, season 2 could blow me out of the water and like fix things again. You know what I mean? If season 2 comes in clutch, that would be great. But for now, I'm just going to consider this as really good and really well-made Monsterverse fan fiction.
Well, by the time the first episode was over, Meadow checked out. I watched the first 4 episodes in a couple days, and then for almost a month, I didn't touch the show. But then I powered through the last 6 episodes purely just because I had a week before the Apple TV subscription would expire. So I was just like, fuck it, let's just power through it. And I have to say, I hated this show.
No. Understandable.
I did not like this show hardly at all. This is one of my least favorite installments of the entire Godzilla franchise. And it's easily, like, fuck all the criticisms I said for any of the MonsterVerse movies. This is easily the weakest of the entire MonsterVerse. And with how this show ends, I kind of don't give two fucks about any of those spin-offs or the second season. This show
I love it.
is awful.
Like
So
I
what you're
said,
saying is you loved it.
It's interesting fan fiction, but I feel like overall it just really it feels like the black sheep of the MonsterVerse.
No.
You know
That
what
would
I
be
mean?
Skull Island, which is the one that gets forgotten about.
No, Skull Island's the best. I love Skull Island. Skull Island to this day is my favorite MonsterVerse movie.
No. I said Skull Island. I didn't say
Oh.
Kong Skull Island. Remember, we got the
yeah.
animated one because you were. See, that's the one that gets forgotten about. Like
they're both. I mean, they're both basically MonsterVerse fan fiction. Let's be honest. They're both
I still haven't seen
fan
the
fiction.
Skull Island show.
Skull
but I'm
Island,
not really interested in
I feel like that
either.
one. The best episode is episode 7 because it's mostly
As
just.
we've talked about. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's. I have mentioned that before, but yeah, 'cause Pierce and
Okay,
I, we did a whole
so-
discussion on it. You having some McDonald's there, Pierce? Burger King, Chicken Shack, KFC, Arby's,
Yeah, you're making me hungry. And I just ate before.
Chick-fil-A. Okay.
I've never actually had Chick-fil-A. Anyway, moving on. So, Monarch Legacy of Monsters is an American monster television series created by Chris Black and Matt Fraction. What an odd last name. And produced by Legendary Television. Based on Godzilla by Toho Co. Ltd., it is the 6th installment and the second television series in the MonsterVerse franchise. Following the events of Godzilla 2014, the show follows members of the Monarch organization as they encounter Godzilla and other monsters called Titans across a half century. The premise of this show goes as such. We are going to go through the plots of each episode, but this little premise paragraph here I feel like should be mentioned. In 2015, 1 year after the reemergence of Godzilla, half-siblings Kate and Kentaro Randa investigate their missing father Hiroshi's connection to Monarch, the covert organization monitoring giant monsters known as Titans or Mutos. Muto, of course, being massive unidentified terrestrial organism. 2 generations earlier, Bill Randa and Keiko Miura are scientists involved with the early development of Monarch. Former Army officer Lee Shaw becomes a close ally to the Randa family across both time periods. Now we're gonna flip-flop back and forth between reading each episode, so that way it's just not a half hour of me going on and on. But I'll start. Episode 1.
Make sure you have Wikipedia open, Pierce.
Episode 1.
What? Do I need it open too?
Yeah, you're gonna read 2.
Are we reading
You're
the
gonna
whole?
like it.
How in depth are we reading? Are we just reading like a brief summary? Are we reading like every episode? Like
Every episode.
And you're gonna like it.
oh my gosh, I hate you guys.
Hey, this is my
I
least
hate
favorite
you guys.
too, but we gotta do it. So episode 1 is titled Aftermath. Following Godzilla's battle with the Mutos in San Francisco, school teacher Kate Randa reunites with her estranged father, Hiroshi, who then leaves without elaboration.
Asshole.
Hiroshi later... no. Zip it. Just save it for later.
He is an ass, though.
Believe me. Hiroshi later disappears in Alaska and is presumed dead. A year later, Kate travels to Tokyo to settle Hiroshi's affairs. She discovers that he had a second wife, Emiko, and a son, Kentaro, in Japan. Kentaro leads Kate to Hiroshi's office, where she discovers a safe containing files belonging to their grandfather, Monarch researcher Bill Randa. Seeking answers about Monarch's presence in San Francisco and Hiroshi's connection to them, Kate and Kentaro recruit Kentaro's ex-girlfriend, May Aloe Hewitt, to decode the files. Monarch employee Tim is notified of their activity. In 1959, Bill Randa and scientist Keiko Miura follow radiation in Kazakhstan with fellow Monarch official Colonel Leland Shaw. However, the radiation is a cover story for a hole drilled through the earth. Radiation levels drop to 0 around a power plant, and hollow caverns exist in the bedrock beneath. Venturing inside, they discover eggs belonging to insectoid endoswarmers. Keiko and Shaw rappel down to collect genetic material from the eggs. However, endoswarmer larvae awaken from the eggs and drag Keiko into a deep pit. Sean, episode 2.
Episode 2, known as Departure, also directed by Matt Shockman and written by Chris Black. He did the first 2 episodes. What you'll notice is like you have people directing kind of in pairs. So Departure, in 2015, Kentaro discovers Monarch files in Hiroshi's office, indicating that Shaw, his honorary great uncle, moved to an assisted living facility in Japan. Tim and Monarch field operative Michelle Duval track down Kate. Kentaro may in an attempt to find the decoded files, but they escape. Kate Kentaro may go on the run and find Shaw, who reveals that the facility is a pretense for Monarch to keep him under house arrest. Shaw convinces them to escape from the facility and follow Hiroshi to his last known location in Alaska. In 1952, Shaw is assigned as Keiko's escort on an expedition. Following the unusual radiation in the Philippines, they meet Bill in the jungle, who claims to be following folktales of a fire-breathing dragon. Keiko recruits Bill against a skeptical Shaw's advice, and Shaw departs. Continuing alone, Keiko and Bill discover the wreckage of the USS Lawton, a Navy ship that sank in 1943, from which Bill was the sole survivor. They discover corpses in the ship and are attacked by an ion dragon. Having seen the ion dragon's radiation-based fire, Shaw returns to the ship, rescuing Keiko and Bill and outrunning the ion dragon. I gotta say, though, I was glad they finally answered that question from Kong Skull Island about what sunk the Lawton, because that was one thing that's been bugging me for so many years. So,
Pierce, you do Secrets and Lies.
Okay, episode 3. It's directed by Julian Holmes and written by Andrew Colville. In 2015, Kate, Kentaro, May, and Shaw escape to Japan on a ferry bound for Pohang, Korea. In Pohang, they are accosted by border guards before one of them, Duho, reveals himself as Shaw's old friend.
R.I.P. Duho.
Duho transports them to Alaska by plane. On the way, May infers from Bill's files that Hiroshi was likely following a list of coordinates identified by Monarch. In Alaska, they find the wreckage of Hiroshi's plane as well as an encampment suggesting his survival. Duho realizes that Hiroshi's plane was attacked after landing. A Frostvark kills him and destroys his plane. In 1954, Shaw has joined Monarch in a command position. He, Bill, and Keiko present a cast of Godzilla's footprints to Shaw's superior office. General Puckett to secure uranium for luring Godzilla out of hiding. In Bikini Atoll, Bill and Keiko are horrified to discover that Puckett has delivered the uranium in a nuclear bomb to kill Godzilla as part of the Castle Bravo test. As Godzilla surfaces, Keiko attempts to halt the detonation, but Shaw restrains her and the bomb is detonated. In the aftermath, Shaw is given a blank check by Puckett for Monarch to research the Titans.
Episode 4, titled Parallels and Interiors, also directed by Julian Holmes, but written by Mia Bellhart. In 2015, the Frostvark's emergence is detected by Monarch. Kate, Kentaro, May, and Shaw manage to escape from the Frostvark, but May falls into a pool of water and quickly develops hypothermia as they try to find shelter. Kentaro splits off from the rest of the group like a complete dumbass and finds a building that he saw from the plane, which turns out to be an old radio station that had previously been repaired by Hiroshi. Having learned that the Frostvark feeds on heat energy, Kate, May, and Shaw create a bonfire to distract it long enough for a helicopter that Kentaro contacted to arrive and rescue them. The group are taken to a Monarch outpost where they are greeted by Tim and Duval. In 2013, Kentaro meets May while waiting for his first art show at a prestigious gallery. He chooses to spend the evening with her instead of preparing for the show like a complete dumbass, and they bond. Yeah, carnally. Kentaro ultimately decides to present his art before he is ready to do so out of a desire to make his father proud. The night of the gallery is the last time he sees Hiroshi before the latter's disappearance.
All right, episode 5, The Way Out, directed by Marzi Almas and written by Amanda Overton. In 2015, Monarch Deputy Director Natalia Verdugo is frustrated to learn that Shaw has kept Kate, Kentaro, May in the dark about Hiroshi's activities in Alaska. Duvall suggests releasing the three to track their movements. After returning to San Francisco, Kate convinces her mother, Caroline, and Caroline's colleague James to smuggle them towards Hiroshi's office in a restricted zone of the city's ruins. Evading military patrols and dealing with Kate's PTSD, they eventually reach Hiroshi's office. While they fail to find further hidden files, Kentaro concludes from Hiroshi's map that he is likely headed to Africa in search of the Titans. May secretly contacts Duvall, asking to go home in exchange for her cooperation. In 2014, 2 days before Godzilla's emergence, Kate is in a relationship with fellow teacher Danny, who discusses moving in together. Unbeknownst to Danny, Kate cheated on her with another woman. On G-Day,
Fuck!
On G-Day, a guilty Kate chooses to leave Danny behind to chaperone a bus of children across the Golden Gate Bridge. Many of the children are killed when Godzilla crashes through the bridge during his clash with the military. Oh boy.
That was a woman? Moving on.
Well, I mean...
Moving on.
I mean, is it really a surprise she's a school teacher in San Francisco?
Moving on.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, I mean... never mind. Just go on.
Episode 6, Terrifying Miracles, directed by Marzi Almas and written by Carl Greenfield. In 2015, Duvall breaks Shaw out of captivity, revealing that she joined Monarch after her sister died in the Janjira power plant disaster, but has become disillusioned. They take Kate, Kentaro, and May to the Algerian Sahara, where they find Hiroshi using a Titan lure. He warns them to escape before fleeing. Tim and other Monarch agents find the team in Algeria. Godzilla emerges and causes their helicopter to crash. Shaw and Duvall reveal their intent to follow and help Godzilla, but Kate, Kentaro, and May leave to find Hiroshi.
Like dumbasses.
Kate and Kentaro are angered when May reveals that she allowed Monarch to track them. In 1955, Shaw and Keiko attend a defense industry ball where they bond. Bill recalls them to Monarch headquarters. They learn that Suzuki, a Japanese scientist, has captured isotopic signatures with his Titan lure. As Bill and Keiko travel to meet Suzuki, Shaw reluctantly stays behind to present a budget proposal. But he eventually abandons the meeting and joins them in Japan due to his feelings for Keiko. Godzilla destroys the lure, returning to the United States to inform Puckett of Godzilla's survival. They learn that he has transferred Monarch's command in Shaw's absence.
He got friend zoned for that mistake there.
Hella.
Well, probably the worst episode of the series.
Episode 7, Will the Real May Please Stand Up? Directed by Hiromi Kamata and written by Mariko Tamaki.
I've covered videos and stuff she's done before, so.
In 2015, May is kidnapped at the airport in Tindouf, Algeria, by her former employer, Applied Experimental Technologies, who gives her the choice of spying on Monarch or being prosecuted. Kate accosts Tim when he arrives at the airport and asks him to help locate May. Tim, Kate, and Kentaro find May's family in Tacoma, Washington, not far from where I live, and learn about her past from her sister, Lyra. They trigger a false Titan alert to rescue May from AET, but she chooses not to spy on Monarch and stay behind. Verdugo is convinced by Kate to secure May's release in exchange for help understanding Shaw's plans, and by Tim to take Monarch public to explain the alert. After reaching an agreement with Monarch, AET rebrands to Apex Cybernetics. Shaw and Duvall take over the Alaskan Monarch outpost and detonate a rift to the Hollow Earth to seal it. In 2012, May, then known as Cora Mateo, is recruited by AET. Dissatisfied with the secrecy around her work, she hacks into AET's systems and discovers that they are a front for Monarch's cybernetic animal experimentation. She destroys AET's research and flees to Japan under a false identity.
Episode 8, Birthright, directed by Hiromi Kamada and written by Al Letson. In 2015, Sean Duvall returned the Kazakh's power plant where Keiko was killed in 1959. Now enclosed in a containment facility, Kate and Charles, May, and Tim infer that Shaw is trying to rectify the past. Verdugo sends them after Shaw with a small team. Inside, Shaw and Duvall confront the team. Speaking with Kate alone, Shaw explains that he tends to help Godzilla maintain order by separating the Hollow Earth from the surface world. As Shaw primes explosive charges around a rift to the Hollow Earth inside the pit, an adult endoswarm emerges. May, Kate, Shaw, and the endoswarm fall back into the rift shortly before its destruction. In 1955, Monarch's new head, Lieutenant Commander Hatch, questions Shaw, Keiko, and Bill's evidence of the Titan's existence. Bill assaults Hatch while defending Keiko from a racist remark. With Monarch's existence under jeopardy, Shaw convinces Keiko and Bill to compile their research. Bill realizes that the Titans evade detection through Hollow Earth while sharing his findings with Keiko. He learns that she is a widow raising Hiroshi alone. Bill offers to adopt Hiroshi. As a last resort, Shaw reveals Godzilla's survival while presenting Keiko and Bill's findings to Puckett. So something he had to do, he had to betray their trust a little bit, but it kept Monarch afloat. So
what a terrible name, Hatch.
Yeah.
Episode 9, Axis Mundi, directed by Andy Goddard and written by Matt Fraction. Starting in 2015, Monarch rescues Kentaro and Tim. Verdugo informs a despondent Kentaro of Kate, May, and Shaw's losses. His mother, Emiko, inspires him to continue searching. When Hiroshi returns to his office, Kentaro confronts him. Meanwhile, Shaw and May awaken in an intermediate realm between the surface and the Hollow Earth, Axis Mundi, in search for Kate. Elsewhere, Kate is attacked by a bramble boar, but is rescued by an unaged Keiko. In 1962, Shaw volunteers to lead Operation Hourglass, an expedition into the Hollow Earth. Suzuki's Titan lore is used to induce a partial Titan emergence and stabilize a rift. During the launch, the rift destabilizes and closes. Monarch's funding is cut due to the outcome of Operation Hourglass. Meanwhile, an ion dragon kills Shaw's stranded team while he is sucked back through the rift.
It was the Ion Dragon. Okay, I couldn't understand that when I saw this for the first time.
Yeah, it's all the Ion Dragon.
In 1982, Shaw awakens in a Monarch medical facility, holding a nurse, Emiko, hostage and demanding to see Bill. Shaw is met by an adult Hiroshi. Hiroshi reveals that Bill has died. Monarch intends to abandon their mission and leave the Titans undisturbed. Shaw is placed under house arrest. 32 years later, he sees the news of Godzilla fighting the male Muto in Hawaii.
Now, before that, Nick, did that kind of remind you of the Dark Knight Returns animated movie when Joker just kind of reactivates a bit when he sees Batman on the TV? Do you remember that scene?
Not initially, but now that you mention it, it is a little similar. Yeah, though I do have to question, why is he placed under house arrest for so goddamn long?
Because this is the dirtier side of Monarch we don't really see in the movies, like the shady government organization side.
As we'll talk about later. So, episode 10, Beyond Logic, directed also by Andy Goddard, or Godard, however you say his name,
Goddard.
and written by Chris Black. In 2015, Keiko explains to Kate that she rigged the Titan lure from Operation Hourglass to send a distress signal from the Hollow Earth. They reunite with May and Shaw. Keiko is devastated to learn that decades have passed and that Bill never returned from his expedition to Skull Island. Tim leaves Monarch after clashing with Verdugo over her refusal to investigate Keiko's signal and instead notifies Kentaro and Hiroshi. As Shaw and Keiko reconnect the lure to the Operation Hourglass launch vehicle, she reveals her intention to remain behind, but Kate persuades her otherwise. Shaw activates the vehicle, but inadvertently lures an ion dragon already present in Axis Mundi. Shaw exits the vehicle to reconnect a cable dislodged by the dragon, and Godzilla emerges through a rift and battles the dragon, eventually throwing it back through the rift and activating the vehicle. As Keiko struggles to bring Shaw back into the vehicle, he sacrifices himself to allow their escape. In 2017, at an Apex Cybernetics research station on Skull Island, Hiroshi successfully returns the vehicle to the surface. He, Kentaro, and Tim, now working with Apex, reunite with Keiko, Kate, and May. They evacuate as Kong approaches for 10 seconds, ending the show with a very bitter taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
So
I thought episode 10 tasted pretty good, but that's just me. Shaw's alive. I'm just going to say straight up, he's alive. Kurt Russell is there somewhere. Kurt Russell's going to discover Godzilla Jr. somewhere in Access Monday, and he's going to ride him out into the sunset. Like he's going to emerge like Will Ferrell in Land of the Lost in either season 2 or the next MonsterVerse movie. It's going to be one of the most amazing sights ever. You know what? They should just do that. Have him be like the Nick Totopoulos, where he kind of like from Godzilla the series, where he kind of befriends Godzilla's son. I mean,
we want another Nick Totopoulos.
No. I said Nick Totopoulos from Godzilla the series, where they had that bond with the Godzilla egg from the animated show. Not Matthew Broderick version. That's a lot of fish.
Isn't he supposed to be the same character though?
He's very different in the animated series. Have you watched the animated series, Pierce?
Yeah.
Doesn't he feel very different?
It feels different because they updated his character to be less Matthew Broderick-y, but it's still the same character. Like
right, that's what I mean. You know, less Matthew Broderick-y, more Kurt Russell-y,
okay.
Godzilla Jr.-y. I don't fucking know.
All right. So overall thoughts on the season?
I mean,
you can go first.
Well, I mean, I did a full breakdown of it all. I really did enjoy season 1 of Monarch Legacy of Monsters. I mean, I watched the episode so many times in its kind of initial like run. There's a lot of things that it could have done better for sure. There's definitely some pacing issues, like when she gets to kind of episodes 4 and 5. But then they'll like hit a really good. I think the weakest episodes are the ones where you don't have the 50s crew involved. When they're not on, the episodes without them are the worst by far. Like episodes 5 and 7. I think are easily like my least favorite episodes of the show. But then they'll go like episode 6, and then it'll kind of pick up again because we get like the flashback kind of crew. Even there's little like when episode 6 opens up, they played the song they played in like Peter Jackson's King Kong at the very beginning.
I remember that.
I was hearing that
was a reference, but it definitely made me nostalgic for Kong 05.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of the same deal right there. So I like that aspect too. Like whenever it's that crew, like honestly, I think the show probably would have benefited from just being set in the 50s and then just having Kurt Russell like in the present. You don't really need Kate and May and Kentaro. You could have just had some other people in there, but some reason, but whatever happens, you still needed more Kurt Russell because he's just awesome in the show. Because he just is in general. Let's face it.
Yes.
Well, as I've said before, I enjoyed the show. I had fun watching it. I don't know if I'll watch it again anytime soon. I think
at least until season 2. I'm kind of glad we did the recap reading through things because I'm remembering a lot of stuff now.
I think if I were to like rewatch this series, as if I were to like marathon the entire MonsterVerse, like maybe not even when the next movie comes out, probably like even after that comes out. Like I need some time before I revisit this show. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I kind of want like maybe when the MonsterVerse is over, like officially over, and they've made their finale, like maybe then I'll revisit.
Which hopefully won't be for another 10 years and another 5 movies. That's just me, though.
Yeah. I mean, the latest one had the lowest budget of the bunch, and it's making the most money. So I think it'll hit the $600 million. I think it'll pass 2014 domestically. Obviously, we're not counting for inflation. But to be fair, people aren't going to the movies as much because, well, let's face it, ticket prices are so much more ridiculously overpriced now. And then you have the streaming aspect and all that, too. But it's still doing very well. It's having better legs than some of the other ones. So, and it's just a fun movie. I've seen it 5 times already. So,
My
I
my
didn't
thoughts are
finish.
going to be very brief.
Oh yeah,
And
Pierce didn't
Yeah,
finish.
I didn't
oh,
finish.
okay, go
We were
ahead.
just rambling, so I thought I was just
Yeah.
jumping in.
Like I said, feels like more fan fiction than like a true like MonsterVerse entry. I think they missed a huge opportunity to make this kind of like the X Files. Yeah, I don't know if you guys watched X Files, but
I've watched a little. Yeah.
A little
yeah,
bit.
the first 5 or 6, even 7 seasons of the X Files are great, fantastic stuff. The later seasons, not so much, but I feel like Monarch missed a huge opportunity to have the show be like the X Files, you know. But
Or like Warehouse 13, from what I've read about that show.
sure, I've never seen Warehouse 13, uh, but yeah, the X Files, but with giant monsters. You know, the X Files, they did a lot of globe trotting. That's what I mean. Monarch is kind of like the X Files, like within the context of the X Files show. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think that's
So
what the spinoff might be. The cryptozoology focused one, from what I'm hearing, kind of
yeah,
morphs
because
into
I feel
that.
like I can't be the only one in the world that has said this should be like X Files, or X Files should be like your main influence here. So that's why if I'm not the only one, and that's probably why they're doing this. Plus, they had a Bigfoot reference in within the Monarch show, so it's like,
Right.
oh, if Bigfoot exists, obviously you're gonna have to go into some X Files territory.
Right. I want Mothman and all that too to show up in the series. Give me the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Champy.
Uh, I think the show
Or
came out too
Cressy.
late. I think if it had come out around the same time, or just like immediately following Godzilla King of the Monsters, I think we would have probably enjoyed this more. Uh Also, I know it wasn't supposed to be about the monsters. I know it's supposed to be more human centric, but there's barely like monster stuff in the show. I was
Uh,
a little disappointed that they were edging us like each episode. They were edging like a Godzilla showdown, and like they gave it to us at the very end of episode 10, and it's like, well, classic like Hollywood moment right there. Wait till the
Mhm.
end to give us the goods. But like I feel like, yeah, 10 episodes. Where each episode is nearly 50 minutes. They could have spread out some monster stuff way better than they could have, you know. But anyways, I don't want to give away all my pros and cons. So
yeah, it'll be hard for me not to as well. I was disappointed. I was not overly impressed by this show. Um, this gave me very little stuff that I was really interested in to chew on. Now I will say I don't really. This isn't like one of the worst shows I've ever seen. Like it's well made, and you can tell that there was effort put into this show. And I tried to give it a chance because again, I knew that this was not going to be a even though it's called Legacy of Monsters, it would be about mostly the humans. And I knew that, and I tried to like what's the word? Like try to curb my expectations and like try to get myself into the show, but for the most part I just couldn't. And I can't really explain why without getting into my cons. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I was disappointed. I was not a happy camper with this show. I was not impressed. This is not how you do kaiju TV for me.
fair.
Seanie Boy, how many pros do you have? We're gonna go through all of our pros. Like Sean will do his, Pierce will do his, I'll do mine.
I kind of have 8 right here. I may kind of add on to some stuff as I'm kind of talking, but some of them kind of like intertwine a little bit. So, but I can kind of go through the pro stuff rather quickly.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so we'll start off with my pros. Pro number 1, of course, is Godzilla. I mean, it was the main reason I wanted to watch the show in general. And while we don't have a ton of screen time with him, like every time he would show up in an episode, I get really excited because, well, it's Godzilla. I mean, he briefly appears in the first one. We get some moments that we didn't necessarily see back in 2014. We get like a younger version of him we see in the 50s flashback stuff. I love the part. I mean, obviously, it's kind of a retcon from like 2014 where he's like standing kind of out of the water. but I kind of like what they added too, where he's kind of looking at and he's smiling like, "Oh my god, look, a snack! I can't wait to eat this," and then it just blows up in his face. Like stuff like that's great. And then when he shows up, like we kind of get the first glimpse of him in Japan in a way, like he's in Japanese waters when they have the Titan lore. When he comes, we also got Yoshimitsu Banno's wish of having him appear in Africa. So that was kind of a nice little thing where he appears in the Sahara Desert and he just kind of walks around and just kind of chilling. But like you get kind of those moments that I feel like we kind of missed.
How did he get there?
Hollow Earth portals, probably tunnels.
Oh, what the hell was he doing? Just sleeping?
He probably wanted a napping spot or whatever. Like he was just kind of around. Like he's kind of doing his thing. He's moving around. He emerges. It felt very reminiscent of Mothra versus Godzilla when he popped out of the ground. Yeah. And I like the quieter moments with Godzilla. I feel like we've been kind of missing that in the latest Wingard films because like this felt like we're kind of going back a little bit to 2014 King of the Monsters Godzilla. Obviously, yeah, because it's 2015 and all that. But it was kind of nice to see moments of Godzilla we didn't see, like kind of the in-between year to see what he was up to. And like we got some quieter moments, like some like moments where it kind of like let the scene breathe, where he kind of stares everyone down and he notices them and you just see kind of looks like he saw me. And then he kind of walks off and you feel the sense of scale with him. I also like, too, I feel like he kind of knew that they needed his help in Access Monday as well when he fights Iron Dragon because he sees the crew right there. Like they're signaling for him to kind of like let him out. Like he kind of like almost like nods and looks at him. And then he whoops the Iron Dragon's ass. And it's one of the most awesome things. He just rips it in half and he's like getting spit on. We get to see the atomic breath and all that. And he emerges in one of his coolest entrances I've ever seen, emerging from a portal. He literally floats down and comes out of it. I'm like, okay, top tier Godzilla entrance right there. And like I said, the final episode, when I was watching it, I was like getting really excited. Like as like the night it was there, I'm like, go Godzilla, go do his thing. And well, I would have liked a little bit more of it. To see him at all was still really cool. So love Godzilla, and I like the way Kurt Russell talks about him. And he's like, look, he knows what he's doing. He has a mission. He doesn't really necessarily care about us. He's trying to keep the world separate. So I like that aspect of like Kurt Russell just talking about Godzilla in general. So Godzilla is awesome when he's on screen. Yeah, I could have used a little bit more of him and a little bit more monster stuff, but at least I got him. So I'd rather have the bit of screen time we had as opposed to none at all. So then my next pro is going to be Kurt and Wyatt Russell as Lee Shaw. I think Lee Shaw, after this first season, cemented himself as the best human character in the Monsterverse without question. I think Wyatt played him well. I always like the shot transitions where you kind of cut to Wyatt's face and then like it would kind of flash forward to his dad or whatever. Like some of those shot transitions where we go from father to son, I think it was such brilliant casting to kind of cast the two of them. Obviously, Kurt Russell is yes.
Wyatt does look a lot like his dad.
Right. It's really cool when you kind of see it's like, oh my God, that's his dad right there. That's him and all that. And I mean, the two of them are great. Like they have a little bit of differences, obviously. Like I feel like Wyatt could do kind of was a little bit more serious. Kurt was a little bit more like kind of fun, like as we got to see later on. But I mean, I'm a huge Kurt Russell fan in general. So anything he's in, he always brings his A game. But I was also impressed with what Wyatt did with like kind of the flashback stuff as well. And I also like, I don't know if you were watching any of the behind the scenes interviews with the two of them together. Nope. They just seemed like, you know, a fun family in that, like, they're just kind of talking about like why it's like, I don't like to watch myself on TV. And then Kurt's like, well, I mean, like I'm skimming through the stations and I'm watching The Thing. I'm watching all this stuff. I was like, you like watching yourself? And he's like, yes, I do. Oh no. Like, look at, I'm fiddling with the remote. Oh no. Like The Thing, Big Trouble Little China's on the TV. And they both laugh the same way, which is kind of funny. Like, but like I said, I thought they were so great. Like he'd bring the charisma. Like when he shows up, like in episode 3, it's like, that's the reasons I like that episode was just Kurt Russell was doing his thing. He was funny. He had like his cool one-liners from time to time. It's Kurt Russell. You can't not like Kurt Russell, like in whatever he does. Even if the movie might not be as great, Kurt Russell is always awesome. So, I mean, having him in Godzilla show was just awesome. Like, every time he was on screen, I was into it. So, which is why I wanted more of him in the show and the way he played off everyone in that. Like I said, he brought the fun to the series and like he could do the serious moments as well. The scene where he had with Keiko later on. So Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell, Lee Shaw, fantastic character. I'm convinced he is alive because we don't see a body. Like either he comes back in season 2 of Legacy of Monsters, or maybe they save him for a Monsterverse movie. Would you rather see him show up in season 2 of this show, or would you rather see him pop up in the next Monsterverse movie?
Probably the show first, and then maybe they can have him in a MonsterVerse movie as like his big hurrah end of the series
Yeah, because more Kurt
before
Russell, the
Kurt
better.
kicks the bucket.
What do you think, Pierce? Would you rather?
I agree. I feel like because I know Adam Wingard. I know he wants to make a third movie to kind of like have the Wingard trilogy, but he just signed on to do an A24 movie like just a few days ago. So now his hands are tied. So
But that's a lower budgeted film. He can do both back to back.
Sure, but look, making movies is a hard job. I can
Yes.
Me and Ryan can both tell you that like making movies is a pain in the ass, and very few directors are capable of making two movies at once and both movies being decent.
Unless,
You know
well,
what
I
I
mean, I was gonna say Ridley Scott makes turns out movie after movie in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and half of them end up being garbage.
You could always pull a Spielberg.
think-
You could do Schindler's List and Jurassic Park same year.
Yeah, I think Spielberg and Scorsese are like the only two examples of like filmmakers who can make multiple movies within 1 year and both movies turning out better than okay. But other than that, I can't think of any examples. You know
Well,
what
I
mean?
think too, if Wingard does come back, because the A24 film, I assume the script is all ready to go. He can still kind of work on the writing process on the side, because they still got to write the script. They got to kind of seal some deals, get everything kind of in order for the story portion. If you have already a completed script and it's a smaller independent film, you can get that film out there while
Sean, you underestimate how much pre-production beats your ass as a director.
Well, yeah, I'm sure, but like I said,
that's not just writing it. Most movies have a whole other screenwriter writing them. Pre-production in general is a much bigger beast than just writing the script.
If it's a smaller budgeted film, I'm sure
I'm sure it's not a micro budgeted film.
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know. So, he's done smaller films.
Adam Wingard, I know he has done smaller films before, but he's right off the presses of over $500 million MonsterVerse movie. I'm sure A24 is giving him something decently sized to chew on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see how it goes. But like
I said, I'm not going to expect this new MonsterVerse movie to come out until at least, I'm going to say 2027.
Well, that's what I would assume.
Likely coming out.
I think 3 years is a good gap because you don't want to rush. You don't want a Batman
3 years
situation.
3 years if they get a new director. If Adam Wingard's going to make this first movie and then come back for the MonsterVerse, it might not come until 2028 or 2029 even.
Well, we waited 5 years for King of the Monsters, but we also had Skull Island kind of in between, so that 3 year gap.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying it'd be better to have Kurt Russell come back for season 2. If he were to come back at all, it would be better for him to come back for season 2 if that comes out in 2025 or probably 2026, if we're being really honest. And that would tide us over. Plus, I'm sure they have another thing come out.
Right. So
you know what I mean? They're always looking for shit to do. So I'm sure the MonsterVerse will have, because there's season 2 of Kong. Not Kong, the Skull Island show,
which they haven't greenlit yet because Netflix is just whatever. That needs to be greenlit fast because the way it ends, it needs closure there because apparently the episodes are already written. They just need to give the okay.
Yeah. Plus, I heard a long time ago they were supposed to make some video games for Godzilla.
Yeah, the video game's supposedly coming out later on this year.
And it's I still don't know anything about it or when it's coming out.
But it is a console game, so it's not another because we got Titan Chasers coming out soon, the mobile game. But there's been too damn many mobile Godzilla related games. I want a console game. Give me a console video game already. I'm so sick of mobile this. Oh, here, go play Call of Duty with Godzilla and Kong popping up and they don't really do anything in that. There's so much potential you could have had with those maps. You could have had skull crawlers crawling around where you're trying to battle people and eating you. But, they're so lazy when it comes to this stuff. They just have them kind of stomping the ground and don't even interact with you whatsoever. But anyways, that's discussion for another time. So you're both in on Kurt Russell coming back season 2 and then potentially another movie first. But we'll see what happens with that. Like I said, Wingard, I'm sure they want him to come back to do another one. A24, he's going to do his thing. But they got to get a story for the next film. So spend some time, develop that, make sure you're in a good place, and then plan from there. So, but so
okay, hang on. Let's actually have Pierce go through a couple of his pros.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure all three of
I only have 4.
I'm pretty sure though both of us have the same 1 or 2 pros. So let's just
Yeah,
hear
it
it. Go ahead,
sounds like you and I, Nick, have like the same like opinion. I feel like you like it a lot less than I do, but Sean likes it a lot more than I do. And I'm like
So
right
we're
in the
like
middle.
literally the in between.
Yeah.
So Pierce, you are the Access Monday of this.
Yeah, my first pro is the world building. I love my world building. World building is good. It's a great way to keep the audience immersed, and it was nice. There were some nice touches, with the world building. Like I remember in episode 1 when Kate flies into Japan and she goes into like the Tokyo airport or whatever, and it's like they have like Godzilla signs, like Godzilla evacuation signs.
Mhm.
They have Titan drills where everyone's got to go underground, kind of like bomb shelters. Like,
It reminds me
you
of
know what I
Pacific
mean?
Rim.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I feel like
Mhm.
it was stuff like that where it was like, okay, like this is good stuff. Um, yeah, I just like the world building, and it's nice to see like other aspects of Monarch doing stuff. You know what I mean? Uh, and my next pro is I really like the 1950s storyline a lot. Like I think we can all agree, like the show really excels when it's about that. I feel like they missed an opportunity to like really like dig deep into like the politics and like the state of the world in general. Like they focused like maybe a little too much on the three characters, Bill, Randa, Keiko, and Lee Shaw, and not enough on like what's the military doing? Like what are the politicians doing about this? Because we keep hearing about like all the politicians and like the higher ups all having their hands all over this and where the funding's going and all that, but we never actually get to see like any decision making going on. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like Puckett just shows up and says, "We made this decision, deal with it," and then he slides, right? And it's just like,
Oh, muted yourself.
my mic keeps unplugging itself for some reason. I don't know how to fix that. But yeah, I just wanted to see a little more immersiveness in the 50s. You know what I mean? I know it's hard to like convert a set into 1950s. It's hard to really sell a new time period, especially the later in life we go on.
Mhm.
But yeah, they have a lot of scenes that take place in the 50s, and it's all great stuff, but it's not like a whole lot of 50s stuff. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You're really missing the immersiveness of that time period, and that's kind of a problem when those are the best scenes in the series, you know?
Mhm.
Other than that, I do as a pro, I really do like the 50s storyline and the 50s characters. It's good stuff.
Pro number 1 for me is saving opinions on the characters for later, completely separate. But I do think all across the board, uh, everybody in the main cast gives a really solid performance. Also, not talking about Lee Shaw, he's a separate pro. But yeah, I think everybody here, the acting is pretty strong, the dialogue is well written, and everyone gives a really strong performance. Um, the actress who plays Kate, she's good. Kentaro is the only one who's a little hit or miss. Like sometimes I get the sense he's not really acting; he's just being a Japanese teenager. And well, he is a Japan or not a teenager, but
An adult.
he's a
But
young adult. But there are times where he really acts like a teenager. But I think that is the character. But still,
Mhm.
that's a little hit or miss for me.
We're gonna find Dad. I don't want to find Dad now. Gosh, like.
Hiroshi, the actor who plays him, he's got good facial expressions, and I definitely can tell they're trying to emulate Dr. Serizawa with
Mhm.
Hiroshi. Like he always looks very stoic. He takes his job very seriously. He's very soft spoken and kind of melodramatic.
I was gonna say one thing, Nick, about Sarazawa. I heard that Ken Watanabe couldn't come back due to scheduling conflicts, but he still is. I guess he's open to coming into season 2, from what I heard.
That would be nice. Um, But at times too, I do think the actor who plays Hiroshi is a bit too stone-faced at times. Like he doesn't really. He always looks like he's trying to hold in a shit at times. I'm not saying it'd be funny, but he looks very stiff. Like his facial expressions and his body language are very stiff. But still, the actor does do a decent job. But yeah, everybody all across the board and the young actors too. I have some like nitpicks regarding young Bill Randa. I don't really think the actor looks like a young John Goodman. His performance though is still pretty strong, and his chemistry with Keiko and young Lee Shaw is pretty strong. So yeah, all across the board, everybody gives a really solid performance. Everybody feels like they buy into their characters and they play them well. So, that's a big plus. Pro number 2 is Lee Shaw. He is a good character. He human wise, he is the highlight of the show. Specifically, now Wyatt Russell is fine. He's a good actor. I don't know if he did anything else before this.
He's in 22 Jump Street. He was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I haven't seen either of those.
Okay, well, he plays kind of like the guy who takes over as the new Captain America, but then like
U.S. agent.
Yeah, U.S. agent. Like that's who he plays.
Huh. Okay.
He's good in the show. Like he's like the one person like they try to paint him out. Oh, he's such a bad guy. But I'm like, but you were like saying like the people committing terrorist acts were like they're not really terrorists, even though they're bombing people and stuff. But the guy who snaps because his best friend was killed by these bad guys and executes somebody publicly, despite the Avengers killing numerous people, like he's considered like the bad guy. I'm like, why?
We're not talking about.
Well, I was just saying like other stuff that he's been in. So that's one thing.
But yeah, Wyatt Russell is good, and he does fit in pretty well in the 50s and 60s aesthetic. And he definitely is very believable as a young Kurt Russell, not just because he looks like his dad. He also acts like a young Kurt Russell a lot too, which is nice. And yeah, because he does look like his dad, it is a pretty seamless transition between when it's the 50s and when it's present day, or like 2015 at least.
Right. That's such a great casting idea.
I do know. I remember seeing a few of those transitions where one side it's Wyatt and one side it's Kurt, and they do look very similar. This has actually been happening a couple times in some franchises recently, because we just had Many Saints of Newark, the Sopranos prequel movie, and I don't know the name of the guy who plays Tony Soprano, but the young
James Gandolfini, his son plays.
His son plays young Tony Soprano. And also in a recent Kamen Rider movie, I think it was from 2021, which had to do with time travel, the original Kamen Rider, played by Hiroshi Fujioka, there is a younger version of him in that film, and Hiroshi's son plays the younger version of the original Kamen Rider in that film. So that's cool. And
or you could have Straight Outta Compton, where Ice Cube's son literally plays him in the movie because he looks just like his dad.
Oh yeah,
that too. Yeah,
O'Shea Jackson Jr. plays.
Yep. He's also in the MonsterVerse. He's somebody who he said he wants to come back more than like any other actor. He's trying to like make a G-Team focus series, but we'll see if it happens.
That would be cool. That'd be more entertaining. That'd be kind of like Rescue Me, but with monsters.
Right. And you have an actor who loves Godzilla like more than pretty much one of the other actors in the series. So I do like how they've started to condense down the number of actors in like MonsterVerse films and just kind of carry some of them over, because like you don't need any like egos or that on set. You just have people who just kind of enjoy what they're doing. I think New Empire did this really well.
So anyway, Lee Shaw is very entertaining. I definitely would say, Wyatt's good, but the real highlight of the show is Kurt Russell as old Lee Shaw. He's very charismatic. He's very entertaining to watch. He's very engaging. Kurt Russell gives a really strong performance. You can kind of really feel his enthusiasm for being in this, because I think in one interview he did say that, of course, Kurt is a big fan of Godzilla,
Right.
So playing in this show is kind of like a dream come true for him.
John Carpenter's a huge Godzilla fan too, so I
I
wonder
know that.
I wonder if
He,
Carpenter thinks of like Kurt being in this. Somebody needs to ask him that question.
I'm sure he's very happy for Kurt. But anyway, so yeah, Kurt's the highlight, especially in terms of the human cast. But overall, too, I think for the entirety of the show, Kurt Russell is the highlight. I honestly wish that he was the lead, the only lead that we had for the show.
Because Lee Shaw is the lead character, I think, overall, because he spans like the 2 decades. Or
I probably would say that, yeah, he probably is the best character of the Monsterverse. Best. I don't know if he's my favorite, but I would say, yeah, he probably is the best character in the entirety of the Monsterverse.
At least from the human perspective.
Yes. And to quickly delve on this, I too do like pro number 3, the 1950s setting. This kind of goes in mostly into like the production and production value side of things. Like you can tell that this show has a budget. And while, yeah, they don't explore a whole lot of aspects of the 1950s, whenever there is a scene that's in the 50s or the 60s, it looks like the 50s. Because, you know, nowadays, I'm sure the studios would just say, hey, this is 1965, but it still looks like 2024. But they actually feel like they put in the effort to make the clothes look like the 50s, the vehicles and technology, and even like the atmosphere. It just looks like the 50s, and it's really believable and really solid. Even a lot of the music that they use, that's probably the biggest thing that sells the 50s setting is the music and the clothes. Well, that's really impressive to me that they managed to, and they kind of seamlessly. It's not done in a no, I wouldn't say that. In terms of like visually, I don't think it's jarring whenever they jump from 2015 to the 1950s. But they do make a good distinction. You know which is which is really nice. That's 3 out of my 5 pros. So Sean, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll kind of reiterate some of the stuff, like add on to what you guys were saying in a bit. So, like as Pierce mentioned earlier, the world building I think was one of my pros as well.
Well, no, actually, there's something about the world building I can say, but I do agree that this show does do good world building.
Right. And the thing, like I said, because like the movies don't always have the amount of time to tell all this stuff. Like, okay, how did this happen in this? What about what happened to this story? Now, given that we have the TV show, they're given a lot more time to kind of flesh out the Monsterverse lore in a lot of different ways. Like, for example, episode 2, we finally got an answer as to what happened with the USS Lawton. And now that's something that's been bugging me since Kong Skull Island, ever since like we had that scene where Randa is talking to Packard, and he's like, you know, the USS Lawton, out of 1,000 young men, I was the only survivor. It had no conscience, no reason, just destroy. And finally getting to see what happened to that, I thought was pretty interesting. And of course, like in the Apex stuff, and also this kind of goes into one of my other pros is like adding new like locations to the Monsterverse. Like Axis Mundi is something entirely different from Hollow Earth. I remember like initially I was confused, like because we established in GBK that people couldn't survive like going into Hollow Earth without the heave vehicles. But given that Axis Mundi is a different realm, kind of like going into like, it's almost like going into shallow water versus jumping right into like deep water. Your body just can't withstand that pressure. So that's why they're able to kind of like go through these kind of little mini portals of sorts.
It's a pocket dimension. That's
right. It's a pocket dimension, very interstellar. And the environment's, like I said, kind of standard, but you have like, it feels more dangerous than Hollow Earth because obviously you have the time dilation. And
it reminds me of the Shimmer from the movie Annihilation a little bit.
Okay. I haven't really watched Annihilation. I've seen kind of like bits of it, but like just something kind of eerie about Axis Mundi. Because like Hollow Earth still has kind of that beautiful thing like what we see in GBK and GXK, but Axis Mundi is not a friendly place, especially with the way like time is played around with. Like that was something that was kind of surprising. I always thought like the radiation kept Shaw like kind of younger than actually is, but finding out that it's the whole time dilation thing, I think adds an interesting new unique thing that the Monsterverse can kind of explore. Not sure if the movies are going to really dive into it, if it's going to be more of a Monarch focused thing, but that's something you can kind of like play around with kind of going forward. is the whole Access Monday thing. And then, of course, like I said, going to other pros, I'll just kind of power through. The 50s crew, obviously, was another one. I liked Bill, I liked Keiko, and I liked Lee. Like those three, they were likable characters. Like especially in the past, like you felt the camaraderie amongst them. They didn't do the obnoxious love triangle cheating around sort of thing, which I was like, I didn't want to see it. Obviously, they both had feelings for Keiko, but it wasn't like the present day stuff where like, oh, I'm going to cheat on you, I'm going to cheat on you, I'm going to cheat on you. No, like when a character said, like when Keiko settles with Bill, she settles with Bill. There's no more things with her and kind of Lee. Even when they're kind of like back in the present, they're reunited. And probably one of the best scenes in the Monsterverse from an emotional standpoint is that reunion between, because like he doesn't want to face her because he knows that he's like now an old man and she's still the same as she once was. And then the way Mari Yamamoto has to kind of like emote that she just lost, for one thing, she lost her husband and she's lost 50 years. Everything's kind of gone past her. That's a thing, because at least in something like Interstellar, he was prepared ahead for, because he knew that that was going to happen. But her, it just kind of hits her like a freight train right away, and I thought that was handled exceptionally well. So, so I liked all that stuff. I really like the music too in the show, because I know you mentioned that a second ago. Like I love the theme music for like the opening we kind of see play on screen. Like every time that do 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 do, like I get kind of hyped for it, and even kind of in the finale, the way it kind of plays out on screen. So you got that. I got two more things left. So you got the great VFX as well, which I think we've kind of talked about earlier on. I mean, this is Apple. They have a lot of money, like a lot of mucho dollars that they're willing to spend on this thing, because Apple does not have big IPs on their platform. So this is kind of the biggest one that they have. So they definitely threw a lot of money at this series because, like I said, they're Apple. They're filthy fucking rich. And the effects look great. Like Godzilla looks just as good as he does in the movies. The Endoswarms, and you have the Frostspark Titan and Ion Dragon and all that stuff. The effects look seamless, like on par with the films. Which sometimes with television, like it definitely is a step down in a lot of cases, but this is literally like beat for beat as good, because I think they had a lot of the same effects crews working on it. And then I guess one of my last pros, unless I think of something else, I guess kind of, like I also like too like the world building, because we get to see like different aspects of Monarch in that too. We get to see kind of the dirtier side of the government that we don't really get, because the movies like Monarch is like all, oh, it's so great and all that, but the show actually gets to show like not everything's like all like sunshine and rainbows with it. There is like the government like doing some pretty shady stuff, especially what they do to Lee. And then lastly, like I said, the new creatures that we get to see in the show, like the Endoswarms, the Frostspark Titan, which I kind of like his little design. He's got the ice abilities, kind of similar to Shimo in the New Empire, but not as potent or powerful. And the Ion Dragon, obviously, just being this little shit monster that Godzilla just wipes the floor with. So all that stuff is good, and kind of leaves me anticipating where they could go with season 2. So there you go. There's my pros kind of run through, unless I think of something else.
Go ahead, Piers.
My last two pros, I'd be beating a dead horse, I guess, but Kurt Russell, Lee Shaw, fantastic. His son is also fantastic as a young Lee Shaw. I do want to see more of that character. I just don't know what to do with that character, I guess. Going
Have him
forward,
find Godzilla's son in Hollow Earth and ride him out like Land of the Lost.
Yeah, I mean that might be too silly for where. Well, actually, not, because
says the franchise that gives Kong a power arm.
Yeah, I guess the way we're going, I guess it could go that route, but I don't know. It's a really stark contrast with how serious the Monarch show was, and then just a few months later, how silly the Godzilla X Kong movie is. So I just don't know how. I just can't see Kurt Russell fitting into like the silliness, but it is awesome though. Those are two really good actors playing a really nice character.
He did do Escape from LA.
I don't know if I like that character more than I like Bryan Cranston's character from the Godzilla 2014, and I think it's because Bryan Cranston, it really just in general is just a much more nuanced actor. But yeah, really like the character. And my last pro is that as much as the problems in the show bothered me, I was still entertained on my first viewing. I'm not ready to see it again anytime soon, but I'm sure I will watch it again at some point. So there's that.
My last two pros. There is a decent variety of monsters. Of course, we have Godzilla and a very brief cameo for Kong. We have the endoswarmers, which are a big species of giant insects. I like giant bug movies, and
Starship Troopers.
Huh?
Starship Troopers.
It kind of gave me more, honestly, a vibe from them than Starship Troopers, but I can see where you're coming from with
I just
that.
meant like liking bug movies, like the
Oh yeah,
Endostorms
I like
definitely.
that too, of course. There is the Frostvark, which I just now learned what that thing is called. The Alaskan Titan. I don't think that's a full Titan. I think that's kind of like the what the hell is it? The Murderfish Genitor from Godzilla Dominion. I think it's more like a sub Titan, but still, it looks cool. It kind of gives me vibes of a like a star-nosed mole, but it can actually see, unlike a mole. But that's cool. It's a cool variety, cool design. I like the colors for the Frostbark. It's a very deep shade of blue. The Ion Dragon is cool, but I have a major problem regarding the Ion Dragon. But it's a cool design. It doesn't look really reptilian per se. It kind of looks like a more mammalian type dragon, which I think is really cool. It's not a typical dragon look, but yeah, I like its design.
Did you ever play Yu-Gi-Oh? It kind of reminds me of like one of the like either like the Red Eyes Black Dragon card from it or the Blue Eyes. I don't know. Like you ever play Yu-Gi-Oh, Pierce?
I did. I know what dragon you're talking about.
Right. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit too. Like I immediately thought of Yu-Gi-Oh when I saw this thing.
The endoswarms kind of remind me of the man-eating bug from Yu-Gi-Oh. Now that you mention it. What other monsters were there? I think that's about it. Well, there was those two. There's that. I think it is a Mama Longlegs.
That's right.
Bill is on Skull Island, but there's that big like rock crab monster, which I feel like might have been a reference to Mysterious Island. Watching
it was cool seeing like more of John Goodman too. Like that was a surprise. I didn't know he'd be back.
He was in the trailer.
Yeah, but that kind of no, I'm gonna save that for later. It was nice to see John Goodman, even though it presents a major issue. But whatever. Yeah, there is a decent variety of monsters. And this will lead me into my final pro. The special effects are very solid. There's not really any practical effects, at least that I know of, outside of like the sets for the 1950s setting, which are all really good. It's very believable for being in the 50s. Yeah, all the sets look great. All the CGI and motion capture work is very good. The couple explosions that we do see look great. All the Titans look really good. Godzilla looks like he just stepped out of Godzilla 2014. He looks great. The design is very solid. It's very consistent with both 2014 and King of the Monsters.
Right. You get that kind of in-between look with his dorsal plates kind of like regenerating in that.
Yep, I think he definitely looks best either when he comes out of the ground in Africa or when he's in Axis Mundi in the very end. Yeah, it looks great. All the CG is very, very good, very solid. You can tell that this show had a very big budget, and they spent their money well. So top-notch effects work. Don't have any complaints. That's all. Who has the least amount of cons?
Probably Sean.
Probably me. I feel like I'll kind of think of more as it goes on. I can kind of run through.
As we were talking, I've been adding cons.
Right, like I was like, I don't know like the wording of what to say for a lot of them, but like I kind of know some like off the top of my heads.
I do now have 12 cons.
So, I'll just say a few, and then we'll just kind of jump around.
Say two.
Well, con number one for me, I think, is the pacing of the overall show. I think this is kind of like the biggest issue I have with it. So there's some episodes that move at a quick pace, and then it jumps around sometimes. Like the jump arounds are a little bit jarring, for instance. And I feel like a lot of stuff it kind of like brushes over. Like we don't get answers at times. Like I looked to episode 2, which has a great cliffhanger ending, and then we don't actually see the immediate fallout of them escaping the Android. Like what happened? Like why are we cutting to this modern day stuff with like the 3 young adults, and they're kind of like, I mean, this is another con, like their unlikability with each other.
Save that for later, please.
So, well, I mean, you can jump in and say what you want your stuff, but yeah, like I said, it has some pacing issue. Like some episodes move at a quick pace. I think like episodes 4 and 5, like you could have trimmed that down a little bit. You kind of quickened it up a little bit. Yeah, they're kind of going through their stuff and all that, but it's just a lot of it kind of drags at times, especially when it's not on the focus of like Kurt Russell. Like episode 7, I think was, and 5 definitely, like you really kind of felt it, and a lot of that stuff. So. Because like the constant jump arounds, like the 50s stuff would be really interesting, and then they cut to the modern day stuff, and there'd be a few episodes where we wouldn't get the 50s crew, and I'd really begin to miss them. The unlikability of a lot of the characters is another one for sure. Like Hiroshi is such a dick, like as a dad. Like, I mean, I feel like even when he gets to his reunion with his mom, I'm kind of like not as like the Shaw and Keiko one I was really behind, but the one with Hiroshi and that, like, this guy's a real piece of shit. Like, I mean, he has like 2 like wives he's cheating on. Like, he lied to his family for so many years. I'm like, if this guy died, I would have no sympathy. And he leaves Lee in the episode. Like, this guy's an asshole. Like just like from beginning to end. Yeah, he's still trying to find means to stop all this stuff, but he's, even when he like finds his son again, and like Kentaro is, I feel like, is the most likable of the 3 younger characters, because for one thing, he's not cheating on anybody. I feel like he's kind of the most justified in a lot of ways, like because his dad just kind of left him like to be righteously pissed.
He's the only one.
Right, like he just like snaps at his dad, and rightfully so. Is like, yeah, now she's dead. Yeah, that's right, because you didn't tell us about this stuff, and you just kind of left us there, you asshole. So I like that aspect. And I also felt the most sympathy for him, and especially like we were watching this man literally get cucked before our very eyes, like as like his sister is like trying to hook up with his ex, and I'm like, there's that shot where the like like Kate's holding like May's hand, and like he's just sitting in the car just looking at them, and I'm like, this poor guy, like we're watching him get cucked like before our very eyes, and I started laughing too. I'm like, oh my god! I mean, it didn't really go anywhere because they weren't like a couple things, but I was like, it just seemed kind of, yeah, like it just seemed kind of weird. Like why do we like need that in there? Like, cause it's like, especially with like would you date your sibling's ex like while they're still going through some issues and all that too? Like that just kind of like I feel like it wasn't necessary. Right, like why did everybody have to be kind of a lying cheat? Like at least the Randa family, like, cause like I do kind of like how she mirrors her dad. That's why she's like a lot of like her guilt kind of comes into play, because she's like just as awful as her dad in regards to like cheating on somebody and all that. But like, why do we kind of need that with a lot of these characters? Like so many of them to have this kind of unlikable like bitchiness at times. You didn't get that with Shaw. You didn't get that with like Duval. But you got that with like Kate and May in particular. Kentaro at times too. But I mean, to me, like at least he like, he still kind of helps save the group's lives by contacting like the helicopter and all that. But then you would also go through phases like, well, I don't want to find Dad anymore. Well, I do, but then I don't. I'm like, oh my gosh, enough. Like you guys, I get you've been through a lot, but you're literally gone all this way. You're just gonna go home and all that now too. Just like I said, like those are definitely some cons for sure. You can go ahead and say some more. Like, well, I think of there's a few I have.
Go ahead, Pierce. Start with 2.
I've already added a couple more to my list. I now have 10 cons. I guess I'll start with gosh, I don't know which one to start with. I'll start with this. There's not enough Godzilla in the show.
That's one of my cons too.
I've already like Godzilla. I feel like we've already mentioned that, but like, the reason why we care about Monarch at all is because its connection to Godzilla.
Right.
And Godzilla really makes no difference in the show at all, really. I mean, there are a couple really good scenes that have Godzilla, but Godzilla, like, he shows up, he roars, and then walks away, and then that's it, right? And then 2 episodes go by where we get no Godzilla and anything, and it's just like, yeah, Godzilla. I needed more Godzilla stuff or more Godzilla like references. Like I said, I need that immersion of Godzilla stuff, you know? There are ways you can work around this where you don't need to always show Godzilla, but just Godzilla just didn't feel like in terms of like if you have a list of important things in the show, Godzilla was like at the bottom, it felt like at times, you know?
Well, he is the reason Monarch kept going, though, because like Shaw had to tell the general about like what he found. Like, we didn't kill this thing, and plus he saves their lives at the end. Like, he has this big heroic moment, and the 2014 stuff obviously is kind of what led Kate to doing her
Yeah.
PTSD and all that too, and fear. But
Well, if you were to collect all the Godzilla scenes and put it all together, the runtime would amount to like less than 10 minutes
right,
in
right.
like 10 episodes,
I
500
would
minutes.
actually bet. So to briefly talk about my con of lack of Godzilla, I would actually bet he has barely 3 minutes of screen time for the whole show. Barely. Continue.
Maybe slightly more than that, but definitely less than 10. My next con is that the show like does, even though it's entertaining and all, but the show likes to meander at times. I guess that feeds into what Sean was saying about the pacing, but holy shit, like the show just meanders. It goes on like side quests and like different character stuff, and it's just like, we there is no conclusion to a lot of the stuff. Like there are a lot of loose ends, and I don't know if it's so like does the show need. I don't want season one to fully rely on season two to finally like conclude a bunch of shit. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, but yeah, the show does meander, and there's just a lot of random stuff that has no conclusion. So it'll leave you kind of checking your watch sometimes, and then kind of being unsatisfied at the end. You know.
Well, before I can dive into this, I need to crack open my second one. Con number one for me is the slow pacing. This show drags like a motherfucker. No, in hindsight, so after me and Sean did the DCEU video was actually when I rewatched Zack Snyder's Justice League. And in hindsight, yes, that film does have a few scenes that take its time. I say that because god damn does this show drag its fucking feet. I think you could have easily snipped out 2 whole episodes worth of filler in this show, and it would have moved at a much quicker pace. Would have moved at a much better pace. There's so many scenes that, yeah, they kind of have these weird side quests that feel very inconsequential to the rest of the series. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of character development in both the past and the present. But in the past, it's decent because the characters have good chemistry, but I still do think that it goes on a bit too long. But with the present characters outside of Lee Shaw, it's insufferable because of my biggest problem with this show, which I'll save for later. But yeah, the pacing for this show is bad. It's really slow. It drags its feet like a motherfucker. And whenever the monsters show up, it gets better, but there's a problem with that too. Con number two, this is a very brief one. I think the show kind of takes itself a bit too seriously. I see what they're trying to go for. They're trying to make it fit much more in tone with Godzilla 2014, which that is an aspect of it that I do admire. Like they're trying to make this the true sequel to 2014 in like the tone and how it looks and how it's presented and how seriously it takes itself. But at 2014 still had moments where there maybe not have been humor, but there still was like some lighthearted moments
I
that
think they
were.
still had some lighthearted, like when they're flying the plane and they land it, and they just have that moment where they all kind of look at each other and laugh, like that they survived. Like that felt like a nice bit of levity added to the
For
scene.
me, though, I do agree, but they're way too few and far between.
Right.
With
So
2014, it works. Here, no, not at all. This show takes itself way too seriously to the point where it's just not fun, really. And now that the MonsterVerse has morphed itself into a way more fun and engaging and entertaining franchise, this sticks out like a sore thumb for me. And con number 3, I don't like the structure of this show. I think it's very sloppy. I don't like how they jump back and forth each episode to the past and the present, most of it anyway. I think honestly they should have just had all the scenes like from 52 to 54 to 59 to 62, all of those scenes for the first 5 episodes or however long it would have lasted, and then all the stuff with 2015 in the second half of the show. It would have been much more preferable for me if it was formatted that way. And that's a common complaint that people throw at Man of Steel. Like a lot of people don't like how that movie jumps back and forth. I think that movie did it a lot better, but it also does it at a much more quick pace in a much shorter film. So it works for me there. But with how this show is presented and with how slow it is, for me it just doesn't work. I don't like the structure of the show. It should have just been all the past stuff for the first half, and then all of the present stuff in the second half. Sean.
okay, so one of my next cons is stupidity of the characters. And this is the most apparent for me in, I think it was episode 5, when they're in the quarantine zone in San Francisco and they just start fucking singing really loudly some musical tunes. I'm like, are you guys insane? You were trying to hide from the military. And then they're just busting out like they're like, you know, their own like human jukeboxes, like singing all these little Japanese jingle commercials. I'm like, and then they get like immediately like afterwards, the military spots them like, well, no fucking shit. You're literally supposed to be on a stealth mission and you're singing very loudly. Like, how dumb can you be? Like, that one just like I was audibly groaning like that entire moment. I was just like, you're so stupid. You're so stupid. And you know, stupidity sometimes can kind of work for specific characters that's played for laughs. Like, I mean, Army of Darkness, for example, when Ash is trying to like he looks at the 3 books and he just like completely forgets the words like an idiot, but it's part of the joke. This is not meant to, like, it's played seriously, right? It's not really meant for like the comedic effect. And so it works in that scene because he's such a moron. And then he just like tries to okay, I said the words exactly. Like, let's play it for laughs here. Here they're just really dumb. Like you're on a stealth mission. It just infuriated me so much while I was like, nothing in the show infuriated more than that one scene, because it's just like, you're on a fucking stealth mission. Why are you singing so loudly? Oh, look at that. You got caught. Idiots. So that's definitely one for me. Another one too, I'd say it's kind of more of a nitpick, but it's like, but at the same time, I follow the MonsterVerse, and these are people who are supposed to be working on the show. There's some continuity flubs in this thing. A lot of stuff does not fully fit within kind of the canon of the series to some extent. Some things do, but other things I'm like for instance, I feel like Annie in Misery, she's like, that's not what happened. He never got out of the cockadoodie car. And then they just kind of add like something after the fact. Like at times I feel like that, like for little things like they didn't call them Titans till later on. Well, that one I can kind of deal with. Or another one where it's like when Godzilla stands up, like in the Bikini Atoll stuff. Because I'm like, I saw that. Like it literally blows up before he stands up. Like it's literally in the opening of the movie. How do you kind of miss that? But at the same time, I kind of like the newer bit there where he kind of stares at the bomb for a second. But that's just kind of like a minor stuff. But at the same time, these are people working within the universe. I feel like they should kind of understand the continuity more than you and I, who are like the 3 of us who are fans following this stuff. So like I said, there's some flubs like in that regards. And then kind of one of my last ones I have written down here, unless I have any more off the top of my head, going back to the whole Legacy of Monsters, we need some more monsters in this show. Because this is a show about Monarch. I understand that, but it's also about Legacy of Monsters. I could have used some more creature action throughout, because you could like, I think you could also probably cut out, maybe like trim this down to like maybe 9 episodes or 8 episodes, cut out some of the filler stuff, like some of the boring human elements at times. Like I don't really care much about Kentaro's art show thing. It's not really like, at least with the mystery stuff about where Hiroshi was, like that's kind of like the stuff like, okay, what's really going on here? The stuff with him, like in his art stuff, like that, and how he meets like May in that regards, it's not all that exciting stuff to kind of watch. I'd rather kind of see some more monster action, and we do get to see the monsters. It is really cool, but I'm hoping with season 2 they can kind of pick up the pace, give us some more creature feature stuff. I did like learning the ins and outs of Monarch and seeing kind of like how it kind of becomes, goes public with all the stuff, how we got to see how Apex became connected with it, because that's some stuff that the movies really skipped over. Because when you go from King of the Monsters to GVK, the leaps in technology are absolutely like insane. Like it's just like we just accept it at that point, but like we didn't really get kind of the build up to it. And I think this doing stuff behind the scenes, I think that's what I like to see. But yeah, we need some more monsters in this stuff. I mean, Godzilla's he's the main focal point of the advertisement. That's the reason, like Pierce was saying, that's the reason we're watching this thing, because it is connected to Godzilla. And while his scenes are awesome, could have used a little bit more of him kind of kicking ass a little bit. That's why I liked episode 10 quite a bit, and the excitement of him kind of emerging, doing stuff. But we needed a little bit more.
That's why I say they should have followed an X-Files kind of formula. Each episode could be a monster of the week sort of thing. Each episode focuses on one monster. Next episode focuses on a different monster.
That
Right,
would have been way more preferable.
Exactly.
With an overarching like story arc in the background.
Yeah, that's X-Files. That's exactly like X-Files. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
Pierce, go ahead. I feel like what Sean was just talking about is probably one of your cons too. I wouldn't be surprised.
I guess my cons aren't like in the same order as his, so I guess I'll get to it eventually. But for con number 3, some characters, even if I liked them at the beginning of the show, they were getting less and less interesting as the show was going on. You know what I mean? Like Hiroshi's like absent for most of the series, right? So like
just like he is in his kids' lives.
Yeah. But like it was like I really wanted to see them reunite. I really wanted to see Hiroshi, right? And then he's like it was actually a good thing that they kept him sort of enigmatic for the first few episodes until they finally reunite with him. But once he was finally in the show, I was getting less interested in him. I was like, as the show was going on, I'm like, I kind of don't give a fuck about Hiroshi.
Oh, did you laugh like I did, Pierce, when he just casually walks into like his little like office right there and his son's there? I'm like, you fucking asshole.
Yeah, the guy was an asshole. You know what I mean? Like I was like, man,
like it's no big deal. Like we were like building up to this reunion. Oh, he's really alive and all that, and then he's just walks in like it's no big deal. Oh, hey, son.
Yeah, basically the characters, like his children, Kate and Kentaro, there came a point in the show when they no longer cared about Hiroshi anymore. And once they stopped caring about Hiroshi, I stopped caring about Hiroshi, because at that point he makes no difference to the show at all. I'd say the only time when that changed was when we saw him in 1982 and he saw Kurt Russell, and they're like, okay, that's good. That's good that they're seeing each other and he's seeing him grown up for the first time. But other than that, I couldn't care less about Hiroshi anymore by the end of the show.
Regarding that scene that you're talking about, Sean, real quick, that's another reason why I didn't really much care for the structure of the show, because I at first thought that was like another flashback to like right before Hiroshi disappeared,
like a dream sequence, like hallucination, like earlier on.
But then they make it obvious, no, that's present time. Like one after Kate fell into Axis Mundi, this is present. I was like, oh, okay. I thought this was a flashback again. Because he just waltzes right into the room, just like, oh, no big deal. Here I am.
Like he's Costanza in Seinfeld. Like after he quit. I never quit. What are you talking about, son? I didn't leave you guys.
Yeah, it was kind of jarring because I thought it was a flashback at first. Continue, Pierce.
So my fourth con is that it repeats. The show has an issue with repeating the same story beats a lot. And this is a problem with Godzilla, especially. A lot of Godzilla's runtime in the show is just them repeating the same fucking like scene over and over again, the same flashback. You see it like 3 or 4 times, and it's like,
He shows
Like,
up,
when he
roars,
kills,
and then walks away.
yeah, he shows up, roars, and then walks away. But especially the scene where the kids, spoiler alert, Godzilla kills the school bus of kids, right? We've never
Fuck them
seen.
kids.
Now that's a dark aspect that is sorely missing from the rest of the MonsterVerse. Having dark stuff like that, Godzilla just basically killing a bunch of kids, right? But I mean, at that point, it doesn't matter. I wonder how many people died in Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, But
Good population control.
yeah, they just use that scene with where his head is next to the school bus and he roars, or we see that school bus fall into the San Francisco Bay like 3 times, and it's like we're seeing the same shit over and over again.
Hey, it's a tribute to the old movies that would reuse the same stock footage over and over again.
Yeah. I thought we were supposed to be past that.
Long past that.
But yeah,
like my favorite
I
Godzilla
agree.
movie, Godzilla's Revenge, right, Nick?
Shut up.
I agree that this show could have been condensed into like 6 episodes if they cut out a lot of fluff and stopped reusing the same scenes over and over again. 6 episodes, or maybe
extreme, but I do see
maybe 8 episodes where the extra 2 episodes are stuff we haven't seen at all, but would be more interesting stuff to make the story better, I'm gonna go on to my 5th con just to get some of these out of the way. I feel like the show is really out of place, right? I already said that this feels like fan fiction, and I stand by that. And I say this because the show should have come out earlier. It should have come out before Godzilla versus Kong, because the show is setting up Apex, right? But we've already seen Apex's demise already. You know what I mean? So plus Kong shows up at the very end, right? So it's like, ooh, this would have been great if this was before Godzilla versus Kong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I feel like they kind of fucked up with the timing. I don't know how they could have fixed this, because Godzilla versus Kong had come out like 4 years ago at this point, but I feel like they should have, or yeah, I guess 3, but still, I feel like this either needed to take place after 2015, like this needed to take place a lot later on in the grand scheme of the MonsterVerse.
Maybe during the time jump between King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong. Because I got to say something, that final scene with Kong, it takes place in 2017, but presumably the island has been swallowed up by both its own storm and Ghidorah's remaining superstorm that fused with it in the events of Kingdom Kong. But that didn't happen until after at least 2019. So presumably it was probably as early as early 2020 when that occurred. And also Kong looks exactly the same as how he does in Godzilla versus Kong, and that takes place in 2024, ironically. So that doesn't really, I kind of see what you mean, but that goes into one of my cons coming up, but
yeah,
it should have come out at a different time, or it should have taken place during a different time. Maybe
also,
like during 2020 or 2021.
Also, I just saw the news. R.I.P. Roger Corman. Looks like he just passed away.
No,
oh, shit.
Just now. Oh,
yep.
Hold on.
Well, he's in his 90s, so
he's like 98 or 99 years old.
I feel like because you are cinematic trash, I had to say it. I just saw it. I'm like, I couldn't like not talk about it really quickly. I know this is the big thing, but like, I just saw the news that it just happened, and I'm like,
damn, 19 minutes ago, huh? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. I was hoping you would make it to 100.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
He still had a long life and a long career, so good for you, sir.
Yep. R.I.P. Roger Corman. Thank you, sir.
R.I.P. Roger Corman. You were the GOAT.
All right, I'm going to talk about another one of my cons. This might kind of reach red to the stuff I talked about earlier, but I'll try to put a spin on it. It's boring and unnecessary. So the fact that it's boring, I kind of already did talk about that. It has a slow pace. The structure is sloppy, and it takes itself too seriously, so it's just not fun. But yeah, it's boring as fuck. There's not a whole lot of interesting stuff that happens, in my opinion. But the unnecessary element. This show, I really feel like, well, for one thing, it didn't need to be a show. This easily could have been a movie. It would have been better as a movie. But did we really need to see the origins of Monarch? Did we really need to see, well, I mean, no, did we need to see what happened to the USS Lawton on a show? They could have easily explained that in a comic. They could have explained how Monarch was formed in a comic. This actually, yeah. So Pierce is kind of right. This does feel like Monarch or MonsterVerse fan fiction, because that's another issue, is that some of the stuff that's cemented here doesn't jive with the rest of the franchise. It doesn't jive with the movies. Because when I was watching Kong Skull Island, I thought Godzilla destroyed the USS Lawton. That's the vibe that I got. I know they don't specifically give anything away as to if it was Godzilla or not, but that's just the vibe that I got from John Goodman, is that it was Godzilla that destroyed the USS Lawton. But do we really need to see what happened to it, especially in such a long, drawn-out scene that it is in the show? No. Did we need to see the origin of Monarch spread out over 4 episodes? No. Yeah, a lot of this show feels very unnecessary and pointless and fillery. And it just doesn't sit well with me. It's not fun to watch. It's boring. It's pointless, and it just doesn't fit for me. Next con. Damn, these next ones are really hard to talk about because they're all big. Lack of good monster action and lack of monster variety. Now, what we do see is cool, but all the monsters in this show don't really do anything except show up, be kind of a threat. Like, the biggest threat to me actually wasn't even the Ion Dragon or Godzilla or the Endo, what are they called? Can't hear you, Sean.
Oh, fucking hell. I had a whole rant on the whole Lawton thing. So I actually like that aspect, Nick, because it was a question that's been bugging me for like, I don't know, like 6 years. What sunk the Lawton? So I like answering that question. That was like the one MonsterVerse thing going into the show. I'm like, I want to answer that one off the get-go. But yeah, they had the endoswarms.
That's what they're called. Also, how the hell did the USS Lawton go from the bottom of the ocean to the whole ass middle of far inland?
It carried it, maybe.
The Ion Dragon carried that big ass shit.
Nah, bull.
Maybe it wasn't the Ion. Maybe it was the Shinomura from Godzilla Awakening or something.
I think the show just fucked up. Like the show tried to provide an answer, but like fucked up and gave like the wrong answer because they were trying to think of.
And yeah, that's another thing about the unnecessary. To me, at least, it provides answers that don't make sense, but the answers that the show provides, or like the questions that the show answers, are unnecessary.
Yeah, because I don't know how trivial like what really happened with the USS Lawton. Like, did we need like? I know it's like lore, and I know people really like lore and world building, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter now. Godzilla X Kong, a new empire, it means jack shit now. You know what I mean?
It matters to me because I wanted answers.
See, that's the thing. They could have answered that in a comic. They could have.
Well, we got to see it in film. That's more exciting to me than just some random MonsterVerse comic.
Yeah, but the way they showed it on film makes no sense.
MonsterVerse comics are more soft canon, anyways.
Sure, but still, and that's the thing. It felt drawn out. It just felt unnecessarily drawn out. You could have explained, like, with just a couple shots and a few lines of dialogue showing or explaining what happened to the USS Lawton. But it's like a whole 10 to 15-minute sequence that drags like a motherfucker showing what happened to the USS Lawton. It just feels unnecessary.
I liked it a lot. That's one of my favorite things. But I wanted to see that since Skull Island, so I got to see that. That's the one thing I was like wondering, like, okay, are we going to see this finally happen in the show?
But back to the lack of good monster action. Yeah, the monsters don't really do anything. They show up, they look cool, they have some kind of vague threat towards the humans, and then they either just go away or they're killed. Like the Frostvark is probably honestly the biggest threat towards the humans. Like it also has the longest threat towards the humans. It kind of reminds me of a Graboid at times too, just a little bit. Like it felt.
R.I.P. Duho. Honestly, I wish he was in the show more.
I do too. I liked his dynamic with Kurt Russell as well.
Right, like wouldn't it have been like I don't know, I was kind of getting a little bit of Big Trouble Little China vibes.
The monsters also feel kind of isolated from the rest of the show. Like whenever they show up, it feels like almost an entirely different show or movie that's going on. Like with the Frostvark, that could have been its own movie. That would have been really cool. But also, after the Frostvark's big appearance, when they blow up that rift in Alaska later on, the Frostvark has one very brief appearance, then it's blown up and they never mention it again. The Endoswarms, they show up and they take Keiko to Axis Mundi, and then we don't see them again until episode 8 or 9, whichever one it was. Fully grown, might I add, and it feels a bit jarring and a bit just out of place. The two monsters on Skull Island at the very beginning of the show, it's cool to see them, but they're never mentioned ever again. And yeah, Godzilla, he just shows up, roars, and then just walks away. This will go into my next con, the lack of Godzilla. Yeah, I'm willing to bet at the very most for the entire 10-episode show, Godzilla has maybe at the most 4 minutes of screen time. I'm willing to bet though it's closer to 3. Godzilla has very little impact on the show. He just shows up to roar at the screen for the most part and then just walk away and look cool. And his fight with the Ion Dragon is cool, but it's barely a minute long. He fires his atomic breath once over the course of the entire series, doesn't even kill the Ion Dragon with his atomic breath. How he kills it's cool. He grabs it by its wings and tears it in half and throws half of it away.
Oh, like the thing spitting acid on him. He's like, get the fuck out of my face. Like, I gotta get props to the Iron Dragon. This thing stood no fucking chance, but it still fought like a tough monster. It's like, oh, you asshole. Had no idea about the King of the Monsters pecking order.
Yeah, it
got
was
his ass handed to him so quickly, which was fun.
And the Ion Dragon too would have been more interesting if it was a bigger threat over the course of the show. But whenever it shows up, it just feels so random and isolated. Like they're trying to show that the Ion Dragon's a bigger threat, but they don't show it enough. So whenever it does show up, its presence isn't very earned and it doesn't feel very strong. Like we've seen Ghidorah, we've seen Mechagodzilla, and now that we have the Ion Dragon, it just feels like a huge step down.
I think too, Nick, it's because they're kind of limited given where this fits within the timeline, why they can't make it feel like a bigger threat, because we know where it leads to next. That's the issue sometimes with like prequels and like in between movies, because you know exactly where it's going to lead to. So it kind of kills the suspense for a lot of things. But I think if let's say this was post GVK or GXK right now, you could feel more tension in it because it's, like I said, it's the next part of the story, right? Like this is new territory we're going. And yes, the show does explore new territory. Like obviously we get to access Monday and we get to see things we haven't seen before. But there's still kind of like, we know like where things are going to inevitably lead to. It's like when you did the Star Wars prequel trilogy, right? Gee, I wonder if Darth Vader is going to make it through episodes 3. Oh, wow. Oh, he did. Wow, I was so surprised. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Okay, so to wrap up, there's not much to say, but Godzilla has very little impact on the show. He just, again, beating a dead horse. He shows up, he roars at the screen, he looks cool, and then he just walks away. It's very
candy ass.
It's very repetitive. It's very boring and dull, and it's just not very exciting.
And a lot of his screen time is just footage that they reuse from
that too. Yeah, that's
scene,
the
yeah.
repetitive aspect. So as much as we bitch about the lack of Godzilla screen time in Godzilla 2014, this show makes that movie look very tame by comparison.
Yeah.
You got any more cons, Pierce? I think I just talked about 3.
Oh, Sean, did you have any more?
Like not that I can think of. Like I kind of covered all my main stuff for right now, so I may like agree with a lot of the stuff that you guys are saying, but I just kind of threw some out there. So
I have 6 more. So
just go, man.
All right.
Nick's off camera.
I have 6 more myself. Yeah.
All right. So, as I've said, the show is not consistent at all with like the film canon.
Continuity clubs.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, this feels like fan fiction. There are a lot of things. There are a lot of points that the show tries to make that are never mentioned in the movies. And even in Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire, it's like while they were making that movie, they knew that they were also making the TV show. And I don't know why the writers never like spoke to each other or try to coordinate ways to keep things consistent from that show and onward, right? Because there's stuff in the show that, okay, all right, the show is making a point to introduce certain things. All right, so this is going to be the new normal now for the MonsterVerse. And then Godzilla X Kong comes out, and it's like they threw all the stuff that they introduced in the Monarch show out the window already. You know what I mean?
Maybe because they knew it sucked, so they said, "Nah."
Which stuff would you say they particularly threw out? Axis Mundi.
Okay, Axis Mundi is probably the biggest example of that.
Well,
Axis Mundi is bullshit.
It's not Hollow Earth. It's a different realm.
I don't give a it basically is Hollow Earth.
It's not Hollow Earth. It's not. It's a different dimension. It's the in-between realms. That's why I read the interviews with the showrunners like, well, obviously we couldn't do fully Hollow Earth because the movies had done that and they hadn't gotten to that point yet. So they introduced something that's a little bit different in between that they could kind of like play around with without necessarily interfering with the continuity of the future films. Axis Mundi is not Hollow Earth. That's why
I don't care. It basically is Hollow Earth.
It's not Hollow Earth though.
Passing through a portal to go into a realm underneath the surface. That's basically
it's not the Hollow Earth though. It's in between realm.
Yes, they didn't. The writers after the show came out is like, oh well, we're gonna clarify what Axis Mundi really is instead of like providing that explanation within the show.
They do that within the show. Like, they're like, they even mention it's not. They're like, well, we don't think this is their realm. This is like a realm between realms. They mentioned that specifically. That's why it's called Axis Mundi.
It's bullshit. It makes no sense anyway. Even if that reasoning is canon, it makes no sense. Why does time move differently in Axis Mundi, but it still moves perfectly fine in the rest of the Hollow Earth? You know what I mean?
I'll give you that, but
like, what's the point then? You know? It's basically Hollow Earth. Godzilla can go into Hollow Earth. Godzilla can go into Axis Mundi. Who gives a fuck? It's basically just another layer of Hollow Earth. Understand, Godzilla X Kong introduced another Hollow Earth underneath the already established.
Hey, that's subterranean Earth. That's still within Hollow Earth, but that's just
look. It's all Hollow Earth to me. I don't care. It's Hollow Earth. The writers are like, oh shit, we fucked up. Oh, we'll do in interviews. We'll explain to everyone what we were trying to do, and it's just like, just admit all Hollow Earth. What's up, Jack? I mean, what's up, Nick?
Your mic went off for a second. Now I can kind of see what Pierce is saying. Axis Mundi does conflict with the rest of the MonsterVerse, and it also doesn't really it doesn't feel well explained, and it doesn't help that because this came out right before New Empire.
Right. I
It
would have
would've been
liked a
nice.
little bit of a reference to it
Yeah,
in New
a little
Empire.
reference, at least
Maybe in
just
the
a
next
tiny
movie.
reference would have been nice.
I don't know.
So, yeah, like with Godzilla X Kong now, this is more spoilery for Godzilla X Kong, but the Iwi tribe, how did they get into subterranean Earth without having passed through Axis Mundi, right? Let's just say for like to give like a brief explanation, Axis Mundi is like the layer between the surface and true Hollow Earth, right? So you still got to pass through that, right, in order to get to Hollow Earth. So how did the Iwi tribe do that?
Maybe they always lived down there. Maybe. Well, to be fair,
How'd the Iwi tribe get down there without heaves?
I will explain that. Look at what Gia did in the New Empire. She traveled through Mothra.
That's that the writers fucked up. That's the real explanation.
Look,
okay, so being
I think
with
they
Mothra,
had some. I think even
like-
like King of the Monsters, if you kind of like pause it, like in certain, you know how if you pause during the credits, it tells the story. I'm sure they had their own advanced technology back in the day. I mean, they had the weird crystals and moving around with all that shit and all that too. I'm sure there's some weird explanation for how it works.
The only explanation I can come up with, and let's just move on with Pierce's next con after this. So I'll just say magic.
I was thinking exactly that. That you're gonna introduce just maybe in
aliens,
Monsterverse, the sixth Monsterverse movie. They're going to finally introduce all the mythical.
We do have telekinetic communication
like
now. New Empire confirmed that.
Yeah.
Moving on. Next con.
All right. You mentioned this a long time ago already, Nick, but I like young Bill Randa, but I don't buy him as Bill Randa. I don't buy him as
that's not a huge problem, but it's just like mainly it's the actor's face. He acts, the performance is strong, but his face is just like, nah, that's not.
I mean, look, in episode 9, where it takes place in like 1962, and it's like
no different.
Yeah, they use the same actor, but like 10 years later, in Kong Skull Island, he's gonna look like John Goodman.
I like to theorize.
80. It's
Pierce, like because remember when he's kind of looking down there, he gets kind of blasted in the face with something. I feel like that rapidly ages him. That's my theory, because I'm like, it's not really explained. Like, how does he age this much in 10 years? At least with like Lee Shaw, we have the explanation. He was in there for like barely like 20 years past to the time he was down there, like in this other realm, as opposed to like, there. So there was that explanation, but like I have no idea how like Randa aged that much. And like, you know what? I got an explanation. Being a single parent, that's what aged him.
I can see that.
I guess so. I don't know. Any explanation you can throw at it, it's always going to be a reach.
Right.
You're just
he didn't get hit in the face with that energy. So I like to think that maybe that aged like Benjamin Button him or something.
Such a reach. I mean, look, we're allowed to say like and admit that the writers just continuously like shot themselves in the foot repeatedly while writing the show. So I chalk it up to the writers just didn't. I chalk it to the writers just didn't bother to think of that.
Mm-hmm.
No explanation will justify it at all, unless like Nick said, magic. Like they introduce a mystical element to just like the Force. Like the Force just solves anything. Like any problem within the continuity, any problem with anything, it was the Force. The Force,
How many cons you got left?
I got 2 more.
Okay, let me get through a couple.
Okay.
My next con, Monarch are a bunch of incompetent assholes.
They're a bunch of nincompoops.
They are really stupid in some cases.
For one thing, they really feel like they have their priorities misplaced. This is supposed to be a government sanction that is like dedicated to helping the world either recover from monster attacks, or they're trying to figure out when monsters will attack. and try to either prevent that or mediate it. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
In this show, they are way more concerned about some 50-year-old files potentially being read by the children of one of their top agents. What the hell are they so concerned about? They're way too secretive. They're way too dickish. They're way too selfish. And they're way too mismanaged.
Assholery?
Like the main head of Monarch, what the hell's her name?
Well, she's not the main head, Verdugo.
She is a complete selfish snatch, and I cannot stand her.
I loved when Tim just snapped at her and he just fucking had enough.
That was satisfying, yes, but I could not stand that woman. But yeah, it feels like Monarch is more interested in self-preservation and then just continuing to just keep sitting on their hands and not doing jack diddly shit to figure out when a monster will attack. It seems like they're more content with just waiting for one to attack so that then they can finally have something to do.
Nick, you sound exactly like Shaw on the show. This is what Monarch does. They analyze their data and then they sit on their hands. Then they analyze their data and guess what? They sit on their hands again.
He's 100% right. And God, I'd almost feel more safe with Apex looking over the world because Monarch in this show are made out to just be a bunch of incompetent dickheads.
Can I add on to that, Nick, real quick?
Go ahead.
I have like the MonsterVerse series has just been inconsistent in general about how large Monarch is within that universe. So if most of this takes place in 2015, it should be under Monarch, supposed to be under Serizawa's leadership, basically. But now I know Ken Watanabe, maybe they wanted him and he wanted to be in it, but he is scheduling conflict. The actor couldn't be in it. So I can understand them trying to find ways to work around. How do we make a whole show about Monarch without having like the guy that represents Monarch, like the face of Monarch, not be in it? But do they even reference Serizawa
they
at
do.
all throughout the show?
That I know of.
No,
yeah, it's like Verdugo's first scene. She referenced like, why didn't you she talks to him like, why didn't you go talk to Serizawa about this stuff? So he is referenced.
I totally missed that. I guess
this is what happens when you're mean. You have to analyze every frame of it.
They don't show like they could have gotten a photograph of the guy. They couldn't get the actor. They could have gotten
right. They just have a quick reference to him. They did get John Goodman though, which to me was a surprise. Like when
that honestly just kind of felt like fan service, rather than actually like trying to stitch together continuity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Basically, Monarch in the show just felt extremely detached from Serizawa, and they made. Sean claims that they made one reference that I didn't catch, but
I didn't catch it either.
It feels very detached from Serizawa, and it feels like a totally different Monarch. It feels like that Monarch is not under Serizawa's leadership at all. Basically, that's all. That's what I had to
add. Finish your cons because I'm gonna need to go on a little tirade for the finale to my cons.
Okay.
Finish it.
I got 3 more. Duho. As much as I like Duho, they really do not explain much at all how Lee Shaw knows the guy, and like they never show like the buildup of that friendship. There's no development there, and then he is quickly killed off. Like he dies pretty quickly, and then I don't think they mention him again for the rest of the show. He's pretty much forgotten about. And I was like, damn, that kind of sucks. The writers flubbed.
We needed more Duho. Justice for Duho.
Yeah, justice for Duho, indeed.
And the thing is, I feel like you don't really need to explain all their history because, I mean, because they even mentioned that he tried to escape like a few times while he was in captivity. So I'm sure there's history there. We just haven't seen it yet. I mean, I just bought it based on their chemistry, like between the two of them.
Well, this is like an overall problem with the show. They keep selling short the good things about it.
Right.
The chemistry between Lee Shaw and Duho is really good. Duho is such a nice character, and same thing that they did with Bryan Cranston. They introduce him, and then they kill him very fast. And
This
it's
is a
like, well,
problem.
I kind of wanted more of this, and they're just selling us short on that.
It's a problem with the MonsterVerse. You get the most likable character and they end up dying. Now, Shaw, I don't think is dead because I'm convinced he's still alive because we don't see a body.
Okay.
Until I see like a dead body, he's not dead. I feel like it's left intentionally ambiguous. So if they can get Kurt Russell back or not, but in my mind, he's still alive. It's like Flynn from Tron. Flynn lives.
My next con, May. I hate her. She's a terrible, terrible, terrible character, May. Yeah, she keeps fucking up. I want to like her character so bad at the beginning of the show. This kind of brings me back to a con I mentioned earlier, how I was getting less and less interested with certain characters. May is another one of those characters where at the beginning she was really cool and I kind of liked where they were going with her. And then as the show went on, she was just making such strange decisions and they were introducing new stuff that was just all over the place about her. And I was just starting to lose interest in her character, and she sucks. She's terrible. She's a terrible person. She's doing all this terrible shit. And it's just like, I can't I'm losing investment in that character. And then my last con is John Goodman showing up. I was like, when did he find the time to do this? Right? We see him in Kong Skull Island being with the platoon basically the whole time. When did he find the time to separate and like see the long legs and fight the crab and him throw the case into the water? And like, it was just like, what? This is like
no Roman.
Yeah, it was just like, I don't know. The scenes, it's cool to see John Goodman, but I kind of wanted more of John Goodman doing Monarch stuff. Instead, we got one scene that they showed basically in the trailer anyway. So it was like almost the entire scene was in the trailer, it seems.
Right.
So like
it was like more of them too. And like,
yeah,
maybe like in the 60s or 70s or where we could have had Goodman transition into the role of the younger.
I was waiting for that to happen too, and it just never did. And I'm like, maybe, yeah, John Goodman, he's a high profile actor. He probably wanted a lot of money, and the show was like, well, we need the money for other shit, so we can only get you. We could get the actor in for one day.
They can afford
like,
it. They're
a lot of
they afforded Kurt Russell, and Goodman is not really like this mega high. I mean, he's done lower budgeted stuff for like longer stuff too, but
yeah,
it's nice to see him. You did what?
Red State.
Oh yeah, that Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith has not made a good movie since Jane and Silent Bob Strike Back.
The point is that John Goodman, I think they did not utilize him properly, and I think that he should have just not been in there at all.
He was inconsequential.
Yeah,
I think you could have still fit his scene in because, like, I mean, time does pass. Like, it's like a few days while the groups are separated. We're not seeing every solitary minute of it all.
I don't know. I don't see it that way.
It is that scene with John Goodman took place right after his chopper was taken down by Kong. So, and he was probably by himself for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And he had that scene, and then he threw out the.
Well, that still doesn't make sense because that scene in Monarch is like on the coast of the island, whereas they were like in the heart of Skull Island when his copter is taken down by Kong. So how did he traveled hundreds of miles to the coast and then came all the way back? Like, you know what I mean?
I mean,
so it was just like,
look how much weight he lost between Monarch and like Skull Island. He was doing some heavy cardio.
I guess. I mean,
yeah,
damn.
I don't know. Plus, I don't know if you guys really notice or care that much, but as someone who's in film school doing like green screen stuff and all that, that green screen, like John Goodman, you can tell they brought him in for one day. They shot all his scenes in like the same day, and all his stuff was purely on green screen, and it looked really bad.
That was probably the most noticeable. Like when he's
I was just like,
when he's running like this.
Hindsight, that's probably the one but biggest flub for the effects in this show. So I will agree with you there.
Yeah. So yeah, And that concludes my cons. My list of cons grew as we were talking about this, so that just goes to show how we'll probably view this show from now on.
All right, here comes next stuff. Wake me when it's over.
Con number 8 is, aside from Lee Shaw, all of the characters in this show suck.
Not even
Suck
Keiko?
hard. Oh, and Keiko. Yeah, I'd say Keiko is a decent character. So she's.
What about Tim? He chewed out bitchy Verdugo. Like, he got better as the show went on, I thought.
Still kind of too late for me, because he started.
What about Duho? Justice for Duho.
Duho's not in the show enough to like give him like.
So moving on.
You know.
I feel like we're in that Justice for Barb Stranger Things.
I'm going to focus on the main 4 characters outside of Lee Shaw. Con number 9 is Kentaro. Now he is probably he's probably the least shitty of the main 4. But my problem with him is that he's very inconsistent. Like, one moment he seems like he's the more level-headed and he is the more like competent and respectful of the group. Because like when he first meets Kate's mom, he's very respectful and he's very polite and he's very just kind of reserved. And he even, like, when Kate and her mom are getting into an argument, he goes into Kate's room and he shuts the door and lets them have privacy. And he's very polite towards Kate's mom, tries to help her clean up some stuff, gives her privacy, lets her make her calls and such. But then there's other times where, yeah, like Sean says, he's like, I want to find Dad. Nah, I don't want to find Dad. I want to go with Lee. No, I don't want to go with Lee. I want to help Monarch. No, I don't want to help Monarch. He's very inconsistent, scene by scene, episode by episode, and it's just very frustrating how it seems like they just can't make up their minds what they want to do with Kentaro. But I still would say he is the least shitty of all the main 4. Con number 10 is May. Yeah, I would agree that May is not the best character. Kind of similar to Kentaro too. She has moments where she is not all that shitty. I actually kind of do think I see what they're trying to do with May destroying all that research and technology with the chimpanzee cybernetic stuff. It kind of feels like she is like anti-animal cruelty. So I can see kind of what they're doing with that. But her being prosecuted by AET is kind of swept under the rug in the snap of finger in that episode where, like, it feels, I think it is episode 7.
Episode 7, my least favorite of the whole series.
Where it's very May centric, and they're like drip feeding us all this backstory on what happened between May and AET. And then when we find out what it really was, we think May is going to be in a lot of trouble when she finally gets caught by AET. But then she cuts some kind of deal, and then she goes back on that deal. She reunites with her family for less than 30 seconds in one scene, and then she's with Lee and the rest of the people for the rest of the show. It's very lazily just swept under the rug.
I would have preferred they just left her with her family and then we just moved on.
Kind of same. Yeah, it also feels very rushed and thrown in at the last minute when she reunites with her family, and we think that's the end of her character. That's what she's been wanting to do this whole show up to this point. But then, nope, actually, she's going to be along for the rest of the show. It's just very jarring. But she also is an asshole. She sells Kentaro and Kate out to Monarch just to save her own skin. She's very selfish. She's very unlikable as a result. I just don't much care for May. I like the actress who plays her, though. She's a good actress, but her character just sucks. Con number 11 is Hiroshi. Ugh, God damn. Talk about the worst fucking father imaginable. This man has 2 wives, 2 separate lives, 2 separate children, and he spends maybe 30 seconds of his entire time in his life with both his kids and his wives. He really should not have just had a family, because all he really cares about is himself and his work. He's extremely unlikable, very selfish, and very unengaging as a result, because he's such a piece of shit and he's such a douchebag. I don't give a fuck about his mission to find out what's up with the Titans.
I feel like he needed his comeuppance or something by the end of it.
Comeuppance, and I also don't buy his emotional reunion with his mother whatsoever. It feels very unearned, in my opinion.
Right. I'm like, man, look at all that Lee Shaw had to suffer through, and then Hiroshi's the one who gets kind of the more happier ending. Despite
If Hiroshi was to say that the reason why he secretly is hopping all around the world is because he's trying to reunite with Hun, get him out of here. Is if he's trying to reunite with his mom to try to figure out what happened to her, that would have been one thing. But it's not. And then at the last minute, all of a sudden, he gets this super emotional ending with his mom. It doesn't click. It feels very unearned.
Right. And the only thing that kind of helps it a little bit is because of Keiko, because she's been more likable throughout the whole series.
That's
the actress
all well and good.
Right. Like, from her perspective, it's like, there's my son all grown up, and she has to kind of come to terms with that. But yeah, just he's so unlikable in a lot of this stuff. And, you know, if they did a better job explaining, like, his losing all that has kind of turned him into that, but we don't really get to see that. Like, we just see him as this
comes
asshole.
off like a selfish asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, my biggest problem with this show, and this is the thing that nearly killed this series for me and almost made me quit watching halfway through. Con number 12 is Kate. I fucking hate this woman.
But Nick,
burning
at least she's
passion.
hot.
I don't give 2 fucks about that. Kate Randa is one of, if not the most unlikable characters of the entire kaiju genre. I cannot fucking stand this woman. So right off the bat, in the first episode, we do not have a good introduction to her. When she meets Kentaro and his mom, she's incredibly hostile and incredibly nasty. Some will say, well, it's just because she found out that her father was leading a double life.
Mm-hmm.
Being angry about that surely is understandable. But why do you have to take that out on 2 completely innocent people? As far as you're concerned, why are you taking out all your anger and frustration and disappointment on your half brother and your stepmom? Because she's an angry bitch. And so much of the show, when people are telling her left and right what to do in order to stay safe or to get answers or to do both, she is so oppositional and so defiant. No, I'm not going to go into a stupid bunker to get away from a giant monster attack. No, fuck you. No, I'm not going to go and follow these leads that would probably be the best way to figure out how to find my father that I do and do not give a shit about finding. I'm just going to do this that's totally, completely illogical to everybody else's plans. And I'm going to treat my family like complete shit because I'm an angry, vengeful, spiteful woman. So there's a couple scenes where, no, I do agree that them singing in the quarantine zone is stupid, but I can see that that's like when Kentaro is trying to reach out to try to like level with Kate and try to bond with her somewhat. So on Kentaro's part, it's quite admirable. And when Kate reciprocates those like attempts to bond for like the fraction of a second that she does, it is believable. But then she just turns right back around and starts being snatchety and bitchy all over again. It's extremely inconsistent and not fun to watch.
She gets that from her dad, just being awful.
Yeah, and I think that is what they're going for. The reason why Kate is such an angry, bitter, spiteful piece of shit is because she's just like her dad. I get that. That doesn't mean I have to like it.
Right. And if they work towards like, because characters can start out unlikable, like doing the worst
Sure.
things, but they have to earn that goodwill from the audience over time. And I've seen
I
it done
agree.
before, but they
Uh-huh.
just didn't do a great job.
They
with
didn't
her.
do that with her at all. She starts out being a bitchy, spiteful piece of shit, and she ends being a bitchy, spiteful piece of shit. So then when she meets her mom back in San Francisco, she's insulting her left and right. Unlike Kentaro, who's trying to be respectful, he's trying to be the opposite of how Kate acted towards him and his mom. But Kate is just tearing people down left and right because she's just such an angry, spiteful person. And then, so the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when they established that she's dating a nice school teacher. And it seems like she has a very loving relationship with this woman. They're very sweet and caring towards each other. The next fucking scene, we see her in bed, half packing up her apartment to move in with the brunette chick, fucking that whatever the hell that thing was in her bed. Oh my god damn. I seriously couldn't tell until she spoke. I could not tell that was a woman. But yeah, she's cheating on this woman with this other woman, and I'm just like, okay, nope, I can't do this. I cannot do this with Kate. She is completely irreprehensible, and she's completely unsalvageable as a character. And then she continues just being a shitty, oppositional, defiant, vengeful piece of shit for the rest of the show. I cannot fucking stand this woman.
Mm-hmm.
She's an angry, miserable, spiteful, self-sabotaging, selfish piece of shit. Fuck this woman.
So what you're saying is she's a cunt.
Yeah, total see you next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and one last thing too, her reunion with, well, not really reunion, but the first time that she meets Keiko in Axis Mundi, they treat it as being very, emotional and heartwarming. But to me, it feels very unearned. Because she spent the whole show not giving two fucks about what happened to her grandparents. But then all of a sudden, oh, I'm your granddaughter. And it's all sad and emotional and happy and all that. Nah. And then at the end of the series, when she's reunited with Kentaro 2 years later, they also treat that as being very emotional and very sappy and happy-go-lucky. Nah, it's very unearned. She spent so much of the show treating Kentaro like shit, and then all of a sudden she's happy to see her half-brother that she never gave two fucks about. Nah, doesn't work for me. Feels very unearned.
You know what I wish we could have seen? I wish we could have seen like Hiroshi's both of his wives like have a scene together and
Missed opportunity.
Right, have them just slap the shit out of him.
You know what
That's what
I
I
would
wanna
have liked to have seen too? A better show.
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
final thoughts on Monarch Legacy of Monsters, unless you got anything else to say.
Well, I still enjoyed Monarch Legacy of Monsters. It was fun watching it as it kind of aired. It was kind of like a bonding show with me and like, my fam and all that. We'd be like, "Oh, new Monarch out." We just like talk and speculate and all that. That was kind of the appeal for me, is kind of watching it week to week. As we've kind of gone through this whole thing, I can see where all the issues kind of come into play, and there's a lot that I agree with both of you on in the show. There's some things I'll argue against a little bit, but like there's some things I just can't necessarily like fully like defend from my perspective. But it is a show I did quite enjoy. I enjoyed covering it week to week on YouTube. It was fun for me. Like, and there are some genuinely like really awesome moments within it. Like I said, like the world building aspects, there's some great looking effects. Aside from the John Goodman stuff, kind of earlier on with the green screen bits, like that's just kind of iffy stuff. But Kurt Russell being as awesome as he is, some interesting things like just a little Easter eggs for fans, like finding out one of the characters was like Sandra Brody's like sister. That was kind of a cool little Easter egg.
That goes nowhere.
It doesn't go really,
and then they never mention it again.
right? But like for me, I'm like, oh, that's a cool, neat little Easter egg, but could have done a little bit more. But there's some genuinely like really great stuff in there. Like I said, episode 10 I thought was really, really good. I mean, they definitely stuck the landing for me personally with it. There's some iffy parts for sure. Like episodes like 5 and 7 in particular are the two like ones like I just don't like. Episode 7 I just like don't really see much value in kind of rewatching, aside from, oh, this is setting up Apex and all that. And I get it, like there's a lot of the MonsterVerse lore that never really was built up, and they're kind of retroactively doing that with this show. Like I get where Pierce is coming from with the timing of it, like, oh, we're already kind of past this point, but it still was never really done. So I'm glad they're kind of retroactively adding to it a little bit more. And maybe, who knows, maybe some future movies will acknowledge some of the stuff that the show did, like Access Monday, since it is separate from Hollow-Earth. The way I don't fully know how, because it's like weird, because like they activate Hollow-Earth portals, but then like these ones are kind of different. Maybe it's different readings, because and instead of like the Orca, they have like these gamma simulators.
It doesn't matter, Sean. It's bullshit. The writers of the show did not talk to the writers of the movies, and now we're seeing a huge like rift.
I'm kind of on Pierce's side here. I agree.
All right. Well, we'll see now that, because like I think too, like they have the show and the movie coming out simultaneously. Now that season 2 of this is a go, I feel like they can kind of do a little bit more. Okay, let's try to make this work a little bit more here, people. Let's get a little bit more cohesive, because I think too, like a lot of stuff when you're doing like shared universe stuff, they could have done a better job at kind of integrating things more. It's like some things they integrate well, and then other bits it's like not quite as much. But I still like the show overall. Like I said, it was cool seeing Godzilla do some cool stuff. Could have used a little bit more of him. Kurt Russell, of course. Wyatt Russell is really good. And I liked, like I said, the world building aspects to it. I feel like they really could have done a better job making some of the characters more likable. Because, like, I don't mind spending time with humans and kaiju stuff. Like I said, when it was focused on Kurt Russell, when he's on screen, great. Like, if he's always on screen, or like Tim and the flashback crew, fantastic. So when you have to focus on the cheating, Hiroshi being an asshole, Kate being an asshole, Mate being an asshole, Kentaro being an asshole, but like to me, he was definitely out of those 4, he was the most likable, because like even after all that stuff, he did still kind of help save them in certain instances. But there's just a lot of really questionable things that kind of happen in it. But this is the first season. A lot of shows go through growing pains, so I'm hopeful that they've learned from the criticisms of season 1, really try to work hard, make some of these people a lot more likable if they're going to be in the show, and do some interesting things with the series. Because there's that gap between, 2014 King of the Monsters. Still a lot of stuff you could do. Like the stuff on Skull Island, like the destruction of that place, is something we never really got to see too much in the movies. We're kind of just brushed over it. So that's kind of the stuff I really want to see explored a little bit more in a potential like season 2. And of course, bring back Lee Shaw, because he was by far the best character in the whole series. So I still really liked Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Could have been a lot better, but it also could have been a whole hell of a lot worse. It could have been the anime trilogy.
Rating?
Oh, I'm gonna go a 7.5 out of 10.
Pierce?
Well, like I said, I upon initial viewing, I did enjoy the show. I mean, and I think I enjoyed it more so out of bias to Godzilla stuff, because I feel like if Godzilla truly was not involved in the show at all, and this was just a regular show, I feel like I wouldn't like it that much. You know what I mean? And
but the show wouldn't exist probably without Godzilla. Let's be real.
Nah.
Yeah. It was intriguing. I like the world building. The world building is the best aspect to it. And Lee Shaw is a welcome character into the MonsterVerse. For season 2, I'm not like gonna boycott season 2, but I'm more cautious, and I'm still intrigued. I don't know what they're gonna do, because it looks like they're setting up Apex, and I guess season 2 is gonna focus more on Apex, but like I said in Godzilla versus Kong, we've seen Apex's demise already. The leader of Apex, Walter Simmons, we've seen him die. So like again, I have no reason to care for Apex, but it looks like Apex is going to be like a big deal in season 2.
How about we get to find out what happened to Alan Jonah in these movies? Like he just disappears after the post-credit scene in King of Charles Dance's
That'd be
character.
nice.
Yeah, that would be an interesting direction for the show to take. I don't know when season 2 is going to take place, like because I think I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think Kurt Russell's character should stay dead. I think they should officially make him dead, because if they bring him back, first of all, how do they bring him back? Right? Are they going to go back into Axis Mundi to go look for him? When is that going to happen? Is that going to happen after Godzilla X Kong? Like, is he going to be 100 years old, 110 years old in 2030? By the time that happens, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. They're gonna have to jump through hoops to make everything make sense if they want to keep like Kurt Russell. You know what I mean?
I actually kind of agree. Yeah.
Like I said, I think this is a huge missed opportunity to really make this like X-Files. It's nice that we got a show. I'm glad that we have a show. I'm glad that they're expanding the Monsterverse and like investing in the Monsterverse, but we didn't deserve this. We deserved something else. And I think that's
well, we got more spin-off shows coming out, so you might get your wish.
I guess so, man. It came out too late. It should have came out to set up Godzilla versus Kong. That's what it needed to happen. I get it. COVID messed everything up, so they released things in a different order. But the show needed to come out before Godzilla versus Kong, not afterwards.
What is that sound?
That's my dog howling upstairs.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought that was your. I thought that was your kid.
No. That old.
No, that is Duchess howling at something upstairs. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, my overall rating, I'm gonna say probably 5 to 5.5. I'm leaning closer to 5.
Yeah, I hated this show. I was not a happy camper when I finished it. Well, I mean, I was happy because I'm like, thank fucking God it's over, so I never have to watch it again. I was initially going to wait until this show possibly got a DVD release before I watched it and reviewed it. Now I'm glad I didn't, because I probably will never buy this show on DVD.
You're cool.
I
would
probably
for completionist purposes.
I probably will never ever watch this again. I don't know. I don't think I'm really excited for season 2. I mean, it'd have to really, like what Pierre said, well, it would have to jump through hoops to make up for how shitty this show is.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird too, like, because some people like the. It's weird because, like, with the Monsterverse, well, Godzilla fandom in general, like, you have people who want it more campy, want it more serious. I know some people who really like this stuff, but didn't like New Empire and the wackier stuff in there. It's like the fandom's so all over the place, but it's kind of like the Godzilla series in general. Like, there's something for everyone, and
that's all well and good, and I agree, and that's something I do like about this franchise. This show is just not for me.
This is the Monarch is
what?
It's the last Jedi of the Monsterverse.
Let's not go that far.
I think it's the last, because I think of Last Jedi as Star Wars fan fiction. You know what I mean? I feel like
yeah, but look what it did to Luke Skywalker. Like, does Monarch have?
Nope, not here. Nope, not here. I don't want to hear it. Not here.
This
series is the Last Jedi of the Monsterverse.
I'm not sure if I really want to see a second season of this show, and I'm not sure if I want to see any more of those spinoffs. If they're anything like this show, I'm not interested.
You're gonna watch them though, for completion purposes.
Yeah, I hated this show. I was not impressed. I did not really like it very much at all, outside of recognizing it's well made. It's very high profile, and
Kurt Russell, of course.
Kurt Russell is the highlight of the show, but this is just not for me. I even liked -1 more than this show. Like,
Well,
by far, actually.
-1 is amazing. So, of course,
Watch my review,
course.
Pierce. But
I did
anyway,
watch your review, and I think you are wrong, Nick. You are wrong about -1.
Oh, -1's fantastic.
I am gonna give Monarch Legacy of Monsters Season 1 a 2 out of 10.
One for Godzilla and one for Kurt Russell.
Sure, there you go. I was not a fan of this show. This is not for me.
Yeah, but then Nick will go and give like Avatar: The Way of Water like a 10 out of 10.
Hey, I'll mute you, boy. Zip it.
That piece of shit movie.
Pierce, you got anything to plug?
Subscribe to Cinematic Trash. Subscribe to the new channel whenever I make it go live. I still don't know what I'm gonna call it. I got a couple of names.
You should just put it on Cinematic Trash, man, because you already got the channel. Then you have to start over again and all that.
No, I have a long list of reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing.
All right, then just
Cinematic Treasure.
Oh my gosh.
Sean, got anything to plug?
Yeah, what did I do? I just posted some videos this past week. More will come out later on. I got to get back to just some written reviews in the near future. I did start writing the next one, so that's already like a work in progress. There's some videos I want to film this year if I can ever get around to it. Halloween ends. I recorded the voiceover for that like last year. The voiceover is all done. I just need to film the live action bits, but because based on the scripting phase, there's other people I need for that specific video. So I'm like, oh, let's get this over with. So, but yeah, but that'll be like later on this year. I mean, that's already like 5 months away. Is October, which is weird to think about.
Right.
I know. I'm just ready for that. So, I posted a video on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So you can check that out. That came out today. Looking forward to more MonsterVerse stuff. I think next week is the last issue of Justice League vs. Godzilla vs. Kong, unless it's a week later. But that's a really fun comic book. Like, I want to see that turned into like an animated film or something like that.
Who would?
Right. It's awesome. Have you read any of the issues yet, Pierce? Or either of you two?
No.
Well, the trade paperback
compendium comes out in
July.
The
trade paperback will be out later on this year. But Godzilla beats Superman at one point. But that's like kind of one of the big. But like, there's an explanation for it, at least earlier on. So we still got like Lex Luthor is piloting Mecha Godzilla, which is really awesome. They do kind of. So like, you remember like in Kong Skull Island, the big skull devil that he fights at the very, I think they call it the Skull Devil at the end, right? Ramarok or whatever. That makes a new that makes a comeback in some fashion, but it's also kind of enhanced in a way to kind of create a new like almost super skull crawler.
Alrighty.
It's fucking awesome is what it is.
Let me know what you think. Since I'm on vacation, I'm gonna hopefully have a couple more videos out before I go back to work. Look forward to those. Go visit Cinematic Trash. Go visit JT is Reborn.
This video is officially longer than my entire Monarch video that I did with the 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Sure. And anyway, so yeah, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. And as always, if you're gonna make a show set in the MonsterVerse, don't take cues from this. Please make a good show. And I will see you guys in the next video.
Peace.
Bye-bye. Toodaloo, motherfucker.